I will be happy to pinch hit.
You get this.
It looks like we are now live on YouTube, so you're good to go.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Delighted to see all your faces and also all those that are. This is the second meeting of the Commission to Study College Affordability and Completion. And first thing I want to do before introducing my co-chair, Senator Daughtry, is just give some reflection points on our first meeting. One, I thought I couldn't be more impressed with the incredible group that we have put together to take a hard look at these issues. I learned a ton at the last meeting. There are a lot of great ideas that were shared. I'm very excited about the commitment that everybody showed to improve the system for our students, whether it's decreasing their financial burden, frankly, just getting them through school so that they can jump right into, hopefully, the state of Maine workforce. I really can't wait to see what we come up with. I know it's going to be stellar. With that, I'll flip it over to Maddie if she's there. There she is.
I think everyone can see and hear me. Perfect. Thank you, everyone, and good morning. Thank you for making it to our second meeting of this ever important commission, and thank you for your patience while my laptop seems to have decided to go on vacation early, and I had to reset both my mic and my camera. I want to sort of echo a lot of what Representative Crockett just said, that, you know, our first meeting was a wonderful opportunity to sort of dip our toes back into the subject area, and especially for members of the legislature's Joint Standing Committee, I think it's another excellent time for us to sort of drill down into this topic that we don't necessarily have the space or capacity to discuss these issues in detail during, you know, a normal public hearing or work session sort of setup. So I'm excited to, you know, keep moving forward and for what we have today. And I am Senator Maddie Daughtry, and I represent Senate District 24, which are the communities of Brunswick, Hartsfield, North Yarmouth, Freeport, and Pownell. We will go around and do introductions, but I did want to not to put them on the spot, but have the introductions first from members who are unable to be with us on the first commission meeting. So first, Senator Woodsum, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Maddie. Dave Woodsum, State Senator District 33, and have 3 school districts: Sanford, Massabesic, and Sockeye Valley.
Thank you so much. And then Ron Milliken, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Happy to do so. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Milliken. I'm the Director of Student Financial Aid at the University of Maine at Farmington, where I've been working here for 45 years. I'm also connected to a larger network of student financial aid practitioners across the state at public and private institutions, and have numerous contacts with the guidance community and I've shared over the years. So I have opportunities sometimes to get in and out of high schools to do outreach work. And I'm pleased and happy to be here as part of this commission. It's great work. And I'm mindful every day of the needs of our students. I have 2 cases on my desk right now of students who are reaching out because they need money for food. So remember, this is a wide spectrum, and I'm again grateful to have the opportunity to work with you folks. And even though I couldn't attend that first meeting, I apologize for that. I had death situation I was dealing with, but I have been through and watched every moment of those deliberations and was really highly impressed. Everything from Martha's great presentation to all the other input that happened at that meeting. So thank you for the long introduction.
Absolutely. And we're excited to have you with us. So thank you. And then another member we want to introduce is Robert Clark from Hudson. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you. I'm the longest serving president of an institution, public or private, 4-year in the state. I'm beginning my 13th year, and I had the pleasure of serving on the commission back in 2014 with Maddie and a few others, and certainly feel this is a critical topic to us in terms of making sure that we have an affordable value at Hudson as we meet our students' needs. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so great to have you back. I have to say, for new members, thank you, Sam, on the list of members for making sure we have an asterisk on everyone who's part of that original commission. And it's great to have so many of us back on this commission as well. We'll jump into other introductions really quickly, do sort of rapid fire. Representative Salisbury, if I could have you introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maddie. Good morning. My name is Sue Salisbury, and I represent House District 35, which is part of Westbrook.
And do we have Representative Roach with us this morning? Let's see, not seeing Tim. So we'll keep on going down. President Dagler.
I'm David Dagler, president of the Maine Community College System. I'm pleased to be with you today. Thank you.
And then Martha Johnston.
Good morning. Sorry, it took me a second to find my unmute. Martha Johnston, Director of Education at the Finance Authority of Maine.
Thank you. And Jason Judd.
Good morning, everyone. Jason Judd, Executive Director at Educate Maine.
Thank you. And Robert, so sorry, I will get your last name eventually. Robert Placido.
Perfect. I always say anything with a smile. Good morning, everyone. Robert Placido, Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs, University of Maine System. Great to see everybody.
And Elizabeth True.
Good morning. I'm Liz True. I'm the VP for Student Affairs at Maine Maritime Academy, and I was on the original commission as well.
And I think that's everyone. Have I forgotten anyone, Sam or Becky, other than, oh, thank you, Hillary. I'm so sorry. I was going down the list and jumped right over the B's. Hillary, if you'd be so kind as to introduce yourself.
Yep, Hillary Bush. I'm the guidance director at Poland Regional High School.
Thank you so much. And then I do want to introduce our incredible staff for this commission. We have Becky Smith as well as Samantha Warren, who are making sure that the ship is going forward and doesn't sink. So thank you for all the work that you're doing to keep us here and keep us moving forward. With introductions and just sort of reflecting on the first meeting, in the interest of time, I would love to jump right into our NEBI presentation. For those who are not familiar with NEBI, it's the New England Board of Higher Education, and they do incredible policy research throughout our region. And I'm grateful to have Charlotte joining us today. So I will pass the floor over to her and let her take it away.
Thank you so much, Senator Daughtry. It's great to see all of you this morning. Let me just share my presentation here. Is that working for everyone?
Looks perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. So as Senator Daughtry said, I'm Charlotte. I am the Associate Director of Policy and Research at the New England Board of Higher Education, or NEBI. Just a couple quick words about NEBI. We work to support the 6 New England states to address common challenges and bring action to shared opportunities in higher education and workforce development. We've also had the very great fortune of being able to work with a number of you on this call, and we're really excited to be part of this conversation. So you've seen this slide deck before, so this won't be particularly new information, but we were asked by the commission to put together this deck to overview the state of higher education funding and finance in Maine. And some major takeaways from this presentation are listed here, but I will touch on those throughout the presentation. So I'll just read our key recommendation here, which is to keep up with the evolving workforce. Maine has an opportunity to incentivize degrees that translate to family-sustaining wages. However, these degree pathways have to be more affordable to those who wish to pursue them. Increasing state aid to students, allocating more funding to institutions, forming and sustaining employer partnerships to provide tuition assistance benefits and enrollment incentives, and investing in other workforce development programs that translate to academic credit are all critical elements to improving Maine's post-secondary landscape and better serving Maine's current and future students. As you can see, New England surpasses the nation in terms of post-secondary attainment. This is, of course, not surprising, especially given the concentration of institutions we have in our region. Maine ranks in the lower half of the region in terms of attainment, but as you can see, the margins are quite small. I do, while we're on this slide, want to shout out the efforts in Maine that are currently ongoing, like Maine Spark and early college initiatives that are helping to boost a college-going culture in the state. So we hopefully will only be seeing these numbers go up. This is a breakdown of attainment by race and ethnicity in Maine. Of course, keeping in mind that Maine's non-white population is small, but Hispanic attainment outranks white attainment, which is an impressive data point and hopefully an indicator of a future more equitable attainment distribution. As you can see, Maine surpasses the region's average in attainment of short-term credentials and associate degrees, but lags behind the region's average bachelor degree attainment. The 6-year outcomes of Maine completers by institution type is displayed here on this slide. As you can see, completion rates at private 4-year institutions are much higher than the other types of institutions. This is important to note in terms of student debt, which we'll discuss just in a moment. This is how Maine stacks up against the other states in the region in this same category. In particular, the completion rates at private and public 4-year colleges are relatively similar across most states in the region. Let's transition to the financial side of things. Here's a longitudinal average tuition and fees at public 4 years in the region versus in Maine, public 4 years in Maine since 2016. Largely because of the year-to-year consistency at Maine's public institutions in terms of tuition through tuition freezes and very small incremental tuition increases. The increase since 2016 is not as significant as the regional average. The same pattern is true for public 2-year institutions in Maine versus the regional average over time. Based on the median income in 2019, again, this data lags just a bit, 6.4% of household income was required to pay for 2-year college in Maine, and 17% was required to pay for public 4-year college in Maine. This is particularly, this is actually on the lower end, as you can see, compared to other states in the region. Again, that's largely credited to the UMaine system and the community college system's efforts to make the cost of college as affordable as possible for Mainers. This is the average out-of-pocket tuition and fees at public 2-year institutions after the Pell Grant, based on income quartiles. As you can see, Maine requires less out-of-pocket contributions when compared to the rest of the region. Again, the same pattern occurs at the public 4-year institutions as well. Let's talk about state investment in higher education. As noted by SHIO, or as defined by SHIO, education appropriations measure state and local support available for public higher education operating expenses and include research hospitals, exclude research hospitals and medical education. Maine falls pretty much in the middle in terms of, or among the US overall in terms of appropriations per FTE, and it also falls right in the middle of New England by the same measure. And for what it's worth, the 2-year education appropriations per FTE are $7,904, and the 4-year education appropriations per FTE are $8,552. The total state appropriation has remained relatively flat since fiscal year 15-16, which I'm sure you're all keenly aware of. And Maine's total education revenue, which is again defined by SHIO as the sum of education appropriations and net tuition, excluding net tuition revenue used for capital debt service. So this number per FTE is $15,366 as of 2020. This is a 0.4% increase since 2019 and a 1.3% increase since 2015. The majority of states in the US have experienced an increase in total education revenue in 2020, on average 1.2% since 2019. Maine, again, falls on the lower end of total education revenue among other states in the region. Maine also falls in the lower half of New England in terms of need-based aid awarded to students. It's important to note here, though, that Maine enrolls fewer students in public higher education than Massachusetts and Connecticut. That said, an increase to the Maine state grant and to public institutions in the state would make a significant difference here. So I'm sure you can see where I'm going, and that is that less available need-based aid means higher student debt. Maine ranks number 6 in the nation for highest student debt burdens. Despite mostly flat tuition rates, the average federal loan indebtedness for University of Maine undergraduates at graduation in 2020 was $24,683. But again, important to note that this is for the students who actually do have debt, and I believe that's less than half. So important to consider. The statewide average, of course, is also increased by the graduates of private institutions, of which there is a high completion rate in Maine. All this said, this high debt load is a direct result of cuts to higher education funding or flat funding from the state as institutional operation costs increase, especially in light of the pandemic. Students are on the hook now more than ever for paying for college, and this trend exists across the nation. While the UMaine system has kept tuition flat, it's simply not enough to keep costs down for students. Additional state funds, as well as innovative solutions, like I mentioned before, including short-term programs and increased employer-sponsored education benefits, for example, will be critical to lowering the cost burden for students. It's no surprise that higher education has a high return on investment. We wouldn't be here if it didn't. So despite high debt loads, higher education is still a worthwhile investment in Maine. Moreover, the fastest growing industries in Maine that provide family sustaining wages are more likely to require a post-secondary credential. This means that to keep these industries growing, Maine needs to attract more students to attend school and then work in Maine, which all ties back to the need for increased affordability for students. And that brings us to the conclusion of this data presentation. I'd be more than happy to take questions if there are any, and try my best to answer them or get back to you very shortly with a more robust answer. So thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. First off, for those who are sort of new to this area, would you mind defining and explaining what a SHIO is for the rest of the committee?
Oh, yes, I apologize. The State Higher Education Executive Officers, there's one in every state, and SHIO, the organization, produces a whole lot of really useful reports based on the higher education landscape in the country. And in particular, they release an annual report based on higher education finance. And we use a lot of their information to inform our policy recommendations, as well as we use their data to, as you can see by this presentation.
Thank you so much. I figured that was one of those ones when acronyms would always sort of.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
We do have some questions from the commission. Up first, I have Representative Salisbury, followed by President Degler.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Charlotte, for that presentation. I don't know if, can you go back to the presentation to
Yes.
the slide about when you were talking about
Yep.
So I wanted to hear a little bit more about this. Some things you were saying that there are some different variables that affect Maine compared to some other areas? I know that there's been more of an investment, but not matching the sort of costs involved. But does it also impact the number of schools and the types of schools that we have in Maine? Does that impact that at all?
Yeah, of course, which is why there is such this sort of spectrum here. Like in, yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes, the distribution of publics and privates affect this, but it's largely dependent on the amount of students that actually have debt. And so those who have debt in Maine have a lot. But a very large number of graduates of the humane system in particular do not. And I'm sure that Sam can speak a little bit more to that.
Okay, all right, thank you for that.
Thank you. President Degler?
So Charlotte, thank you, Senator Daughtry. Charlotte, my question is in the same area. This would say that to the extent that students who take debt, they take a larger share than might otherwise be the national average by about 10% more percent. The question is, do you have data that suggests how many Mainers take debt compared to the other states? In other words, while the debt taken on per student is high, is the number of debtors also high, or is that relatively low?
In terms of public institutions, I believe that number is relatively low. Again, I would defer to Sam and other humane system folks on that one, but that's something that I can look into comparatively across the region, if that would be helpful.
I think it would be pertinent personally, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, a recognition that tuition or tuition and fees is just one factor in the total cost of attendance, and therefore one factor driving debt. You've also got books, you've got transportation, you've got housing, you've got all those other costs associated. And so at a high, at one of the highly selective, tuition is going to drive that number. But as you come down to much lower cost tuition-based institutions, you've still got those other costs that a student attending full-time is going to incur.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. I have Robert and then Representative Crockett.
Thank you. We could spend a lot of time on this, or at least I could, because it's quite troublesome. It's a weakness in across the country, and for a lot of reasons. The data that we have is limited to the institutions that participate in sending the data. The institutions, so that's one, and then the institutions that do participate and send the data, they're limited by what they have in their system. So they are only showing the debt that the students record with them. They don't show private loans, they don't show loans that parents have, and so forth. And then the really strange, peculiar thing about this whole debt issue is that we don't include, when we do an average, and Charlotte mentioned this, is that we don't include the students who have zero debt. So if we had 99% of our students with zero debt, we would only get the average debt of those, that tiny amount that took out debt. And so then obviously it would skew the number way up. So I think reform in this area, and I've been sort of a proponent of this. I spoke at SHEO once on this topic and some other conferences and across the country, trying to get attention on this. We really want to understand the return on investment for education. We have to understand how much people are spending to get it. But the other thing to keep in mind about debt is the poorest, the reason we started offering debt is to spread the reach. So the poorest students take out more debt. They need debt to support their families, housing, transportation, medical costs, all kinds of things that a non-traditional student who has sort of even median income parents don't have. So it's it really starts to deviate quickly away from the cost of education, where you're thinking about tuition only, to all of these other things that would be a normal cost for someone to live for 4 years. So anyways, happy to chime in more, but I don't want to take all the airtime this morning.
Yeah, no, I think that's just such a great point, that these numbers really only are the surface level story. It's really important to dig deeper to understand what these numbers actually represent, so that we can narrow in on the issues with more clarity and therefore have more actionable items to tackle. So it's not like we're, saying everyone in Maine has this much student debt, and so we have a huge problem. We're kind of on par with the rest of the region, but the story is different in every state, depending on the debt levels and the amount of students who take them on.
Thank you. Ed, I'm sorry, Representative Crockett. I'm bad at titles.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. As Robert pointed out, the devil is in the details. And, although that's always true, this chart that Representative Salisbury asked you to call back is incredibly telling to me, because, when I got into the legislature 3 years ago, all I heard about from my constituents and everything else was the student debt crisis. And as I continue to look at this, I look at this chart, and I'm going to guess that the fourth and fifth states that are above us are probably Northeast region states as well, most likely New York and others. So to me, it really is a regional crisis when it comes to student debt. I don't know if that's a fair statement or not, Charlotte, but maybe you can add to it. And this just indicates to me, we have a huge opportunity to hopefully make things better for our kids.
Yeah, I mean, let's think about Massachusetts, for example. Biased just because that's where I'm sitting right now, but the number of institutions in Massachusetts is significantly higher than that in Maine. We have many more private institutions. And the debt level is the same. So, thinking about that in context as well. But you're right. It's always sobering to see these numbers, because we don't want anyone to be burdened with this amount of debt. So it is important to continue to keep this top of mind, but, again, thinking about it contextually rather than in a sort of more of a doomsday mentality. I think we get that enough from all the other things that we're dealing with in higher ed.
Madam Chair, may I have a follow-up?
Absolutely.
Yeah, when I look at our number of 33.5, that doesn't frighten me too much, and the simple reason is, I got a nephew who's applying to colleges this year, and in one of the reports I got from, I think it was actually Unity College, they highlighted basically when you're a high need student, one of the first things that you get from financial aid is federal student loans. Mm-hmm. And over a 4-year period, that's $27,000 itself. So the fact that our number is only $6,000 over what basically they would have to take is actually encouraging to me. Ideally, and this is just my opinion, I think if a student has to take out $27,000 in federal loans over 4 years, that's enough. And so trying to improve that is a huge goal here.
Quick question, Charlotte. I know when I first started doing this work, there's a lot of conversations, about private 4-year and 2-year, I'm getting attacked by a puppy, institutions. And I'm wondering, in a lot of the data I've been seeing, those institutions are still out there, but a lot of, I think, both state and federal regulations have been really sort of pulling in sort of the abuses from these types of systems. So, I'm, it wasn't in the presentation, but just wondering in your personal research experience, if you're seeing less of this sort of, for-profit bad actors running amok with student debt in our area.
It's in all honesty, not something that we've looked into recently. Certainly worth taking a look. I think there's certainly fewer headlines about it, which is promising, but worth taking another look.
Definitely. It was just one of those things when I was thinking about like the different debt burden we have between, the public and the privates, the 4-year and the 2-year, and then you have this whole system that, sometimes is harder for us to capture in a lot of this work. So
yes, absolutely.
Any other questions from the commission? Looking around, actually, if you can stop the screen share, I think Ron, you have a question?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to comment. Because I don't think we can say enough, and I think Martha would back me up on this, that we really do need to disaggregate the borrowing populations. It's easy to look at this from a higher level and think, well, $33,000 in debt, we can manage that. But I think when we begin to look at the individual narratives, we're talking about sometimes first generation students who are coming from families which are very borrowing averse. We're also talking about large discrepancies in equity when people leave and enter the workforce, just the wage differentials alone between males and females and what that means. And being at an institution where we graduate large numbers of females, they're not really on an even playing field with their male counterparts if you look at what happens with salaries later on and their ability to repay their loans. But aside from that, we also know that even if you drill down to some of this debt level, it may seem minimal for somebody that leaves the institution, a non-completer, with $7,500 in debt, and they default on that loan, and they spiral into a very difficult situation that is really difficult to get out of. So I think my point is that although we're looking at a slide which demonstrates an average for student debt, there are many more narratives that have implications for how we might plan some solutions to better grease the pipeline to the workforce and to ensure that there's some measure of equity here that's in our ecosphere at large that makes it more conducive for success in the state and our larger objectives. That's all I'll say for right now.
No, I think that's a great point, and Nebi would be happy to look into that disaggregation as well, and provide that to the committee when we're able to. And noting that population with some college and no degree is really important, and Maine has 17.6% of people with some college and no degree. So it's a relatively small number, but still kind of a significant portion of people who may have ongoing debt, and certainly a great opportunity for Maine to target those individuals to potentially return to school in order to reach a position where they're earning a wage to repay it more quickly. So we would be happy to look into that as well.
Thank you. President Dagler?
Just one more piece of feedback on sort of the impact of debt, but there is actually some very interesting research that suggests that increased debt levels suppress career advancement because a person can't take risks in their career, especially early on. They need to focus on that debt plus housing and transportation costs and really become very tied and burdened to that first job. They take the first job they get, they can't advance, and it really suppresses career advancement. And that has a hidden cost on the economy that I think we don't see and don't often measure. Since I've got the mic, and then I'll shut up, Charlotte, the 17% with some college and no degree, I assume that's 17% of the population over 25, or some 17% of the workforce, i.e. we're not including non-college aged students in the denominator.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And that's from the Lumina Stronger Nation report, which I can drop in the chat as well.
That would be great. Thank you. It's a wonderful resource for everyone to take a peek at. Do I have any other questions from the commission? Not seeing any. We're actually ahead of schedule, but first off, Charlotte, I want to thank you for taking the time for being here, for presenting all of your research. And I also have to say that a little bird let me know that you're expecting your first child in a few weeks. My first child seems to keep moving my laptop here. But I want to say congratulations from the entire commission and warm wishes for the next couple of weeks. So
thank you so much. And thank you all for your time and attention. And please feel free to reach out to me. I'll drop my email in the chat with any follow-up questions or research requests pertinent to this committee. We're more than happy to help out. And if it's not me responding to you, it will be one of my wonderful colleagues.
thank you so much. And I should say, for folks who haven't interfaced with NEBI, they're an incredible resource for our region. They do fantastic research work. They also administer the tuition break program, which, if you're not aware of it, as a legislator, or anyone who's listening or watching, please look into it. It's a great debt fighting opportunity for a lot of our students. And I guess the mailman's here, but it's a really great, I really urge everyone to take a peek at it. But with that, thank you, Charlotte, and happy holidays.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Up next, one of the things I'm most excited about with the sort of reboot of our commission is the chance to involve high school counselors, and really emphasizing the importance of the connectivity and also the pipeline between, honestly, starting at, preschool all the way through, the end of your, not that anyone ever stops learning in post-secondary opportunities, but really increasing those connectivity and pipeline conversations. So our own member, Hillary Bush, was, wonderful enough to agree, after talking to my co-chair and I, to help us put together this panel. We have several folks joining us, and I think, if it's okay, Hillary, I'm just going to pass it right over to you to introduce everyone and get us started.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've gathered a group together. I put out some requests, but also I think Samantha helped with this as well. So we've got people from different pockets. So again, I'm from Poland Regional High School. We cover mine at Mechanic Falls and Poland as well. So I'm just going to call out names and you guys can introduce yourselves. So Melissa Gagnon.
Hey there, I'm Melissa Gagnon. I'm the guidance director at Oak Hill High School, which is Sabattis, Litchfield, and Wales, and personally am a resident of Brunswick, Maine.
Johanna Burden.
Hi, everyone. I'm Johanna Burden. I'm a school counselor and guidance director at Portland High, which has about half of the city's high school students, and then our other two high schools have the other half in Portland.
And then Mark Panett.
Hi, Mark Panett, guidance director at Caribou High School, and thank you for allowing me to share today. Look forward to that.
And Kathy Sevigny.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Sivney. I'm the guidance counselor at Fort Kent Community High School. It also takes into the towns of Allagash, Eagle Lake, St. Francis, Wallagrass. So we're at the top of Maine.
And we also have Deb Drew here.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with the commission and with the panel. It's nice to see my colleagues and President Clark here. My name is Deb Drew, and I am professor and director of the Graduate Counseling and Human Relations program at Hudson University, and here today because one of the things we do in our program is prepare school counselors, or as you all have referred to yourselves, school guidance counselors.
Real quick before you jump in, Representative Crockett, I see your hands up.
Yes, I just want to give a shout out to Joanna. Joanna, I am a proud Bulldog Portland High grad myself, so no pressure, but so delighted you're here. And you actually may know all my kids because 3 of them recently graduated from Portland High myself. Their self.
I do. Hello, hello. Great to hear from another Bulldog.
That's right.
And kicking it right back over to you, Hillary.
Okay, so we were asked to put together about 5 to 8 minutes just to talk about what is going on in our schools, what we see, thinking about the career pathways, thinking about college affordability. So I'll start and then let everybody else go afterwards. So just to clarify a little bit on my role here in Poland, we have 500 students here from the 3 towns. There are 3 school counselors at the high school level, which is a very good ratio within the state. We have managed to weather through some reductions in force in our school, but not within the school counseling department. Other responsibilities that I have also include dealing with the budget and the master schedule. I'm an AP coordinator and an SAT coordinator and NUIA coordinator. I'm the liaison to our Lewiston Regional Technical Center and have been, I should say. I'm also an original member of the faculty at Poland Regional High School. I have been here since we opened, and I have been the liaison to our tech center since we opened. I coordinate all of the roundtables. I'm going to talk more about that, but that's our advisory program. So I coordinate those and have my hand in at every grade level for that. I also work on coordinating our K-12 school counselors in our district, part of a crisis team, student services team. We have BAR, which is building assets and reducing risks. I am part of a team for that. Our TI team, and my new role this year was being deputized as an administrator, because sometimes things fall beyond the administration and no one's left in the building some days due to COVID. So I play lots of different roles here. In the past, Poland's been also part of MELMAT grants. We are pursuing Upward Bound right now with USM. We are part of Embark. So we try to jump on anything we can that had to do with college going. When Poland opened, our students were at over 10 different high schools. And our college going rate when they could get numbers was maybe 30% or so. So when we opened, our directive was to create a college going culture. And I think we've done that pretty successfully. At times, our numbers were in the 80% range going on to college. We're seeing those numbers drop now, though, as well. And COVID is definitely impacting us. I want to talk a little bit about our advisory program. So it is part of how we opened the school, too. It's a heart of our school. Students meet in their advisory programs. Right now, every student is tied to an advisor. There are about 10 to 12 students per advisory group. They stay together for all 4 years and they meet every single day for about half an hour. So it is a big commitment. It is also a big curriculum piece for our guidance office. So in 9th grade, they're learning about high school, but they're producing Who Am I videos about themselves. They do a college application workshop. They do transcript activities, interest inventories. They would do job shadows if we could do them. We build on that in 10th grade. They look more at where am I going is their question. When we can have it, we have a big career fair at Androscoggin County for all sophomores. We introduce all of our sophomores to the tech center, to Lewiston Regional Technical Center. And all of our sophomores must present and pass for graduation, something called the Sophomore Exhibition. Focuses on the questions of who am I, how am I doing, where am I going? At 11th grade, they will build on that. It is a more career focus. We have a post-secondary options guide. So they're going to do some directed learning through looking at colleges, looking at costs, looking at military options, looking at apprentice options, things like that, and sort of investigate what is of interest to them. We make sure they all can do a resume, cover letter, and know how to appropriately use their email. We use EverFi, which is an online financial literacy program with modules. They are forging their way through those right now and complaining about it, but they're getting through it, and college planning and cost is a part of that. And then the guidance office meets weekly with our juniors to present a lot of these materials. We present it to all of them so they have the information. And then we follow up individually with each junior before the end of the year. We offer programming for parents at night. We would do a job shadow if we could, and we also would be doing community service if we could. And then senior year, we do have a graduation requirement that all students must apply to a post-secondary option. It does not have to be college. It can be Region 10's truck driving school. It can be spa tech. It could be anything. It can be the military. But we want them to go through the application process. If it is an actual paper form, we want them to complete it, but they don't have to submit it. So if they're going to do it online, we just sit with them and they do it, but we don't submit it. We again continue with senior class meetings. We meet individually with each senior, and we offer programming for parents and guardians as well. The end of senior year, we have another big presentation that they must present and pass for graduation called the Senior Celebration. May not have the career focus, but they have to do public speaking skills with that. And as well, we have college essays as a standard in all of our senior English classes. They have to do a college essay. So some things that have shifted a little bit with COVID, we have gotten much better at using our technology, using our website, making sure we have resources available, doing lots of videos. We hate, but we do them to make sure we've got everything out there for people. Using our newsletters that go out. We can't use FAME's information and resources enough. FAME is everything we need. We just look on FAME's website. I needed something for working on the student on a FAFSA. I couldn't find it on the FAFSA site. I went to FAME. I found exactly what I needed. So we are always linked up with what they've got, highlighting what they're offering. The Jess Whittier from FAME was just in here this morning to meet with one of my students individually. So like, I can't say enough about FAME. A few other things, we are offering visits for high schools, for colleges to come. The military's coming a lot more. We will honor them in person and let them come in person again. But we are not able to go out and visit colleges, which is normally something that we would do. Let's see. So other things we have noticed, again, our college going rate has decreased in the last few years, but our workforce numbers have increased. And that's there's been a drastic shift. We've been watching the percentages going to the community colleges. That has been increasing. It's probably gone from about a quarter of our class to a third of our class. And we generally graduate about 100 kids. It is much more acceptable to say that they're going to CMCC or SMCC. And the kids talk about the affordability. They don't now, why does it make sense to pay more money when I can save money in this way? And they ask more questions about transferring. We also see less of them going out of state. Again, I think it's because of costs and because we've seen the UMaine system, especially USM and Orono's financial aid packages coming in pretty solid. They're affordable. The liberal arts versus professional programs, it's hard to get a kid to wrap their head around liberal arts in a family. So that's sometimes that's a conversation we're having as well. We have seen employers reaching out more directly to us in the past 2 years. Huge gain. Last year, huge requests from local employers. Our early college numbers have been pretty steady. It's something we've pushed all along, but we are seeing more interest in our 9th and 10th graders. We are pursuing and looking at all our dual enrollment options. We don't always have the numbers in a class to support it. So for instance, we normally run an early college English class with Fort Kent. We're not running it this spring because we just didn't have the number of seniors. So when you're a small school, it's hard to balance that. You want to give the kids the opportunity, but you have to have numbers for it. And our applications for our tech center were up this year, and especially looking for trades. And we saw that across our county. Mel can attest to that too. Very competitive, lots of wait lists for our tech center this year. And I think also I spoke with my colleague at East Grand High School too, just to get some perspective and talking about what a positive thing it was when the fees went away with early college. That really helped because we were trying to figure out how to help kids cover fees. Now we just try to figure out textbooks. Transportation to colleges is something that we've often had to try to figure out when we lost grant money. We've been trying to figure out how to help pay for AP exams. So there's lots of pieces of things that are really good, but our funding has gone. So it's falling back on the district to figure out how to pay for things. Some of the things that I worry about in all of this, obviously equity and access, and it definitely looks different across the state, and it looks different even within my own district. Technology access is different in Minot than it is in Poland. Some things, also I think Mr. Milliken, you said it, borrowing adverse. I think there's also saving adverse people are adverse to saving for college. So we've been talking about 529s or anything like that. That conversation doesn't go very far. So we've tried to introduce that even with our pre-K and K registrations. I don't think it went anywhere. Let's see what else. Transportation is huge. So whether that is transportation to go visit a college, transportation to go take an early college class, transportation to get to college, how to figure out how to get to the airport to catch that plane to go to out of state to college. Like these are the sorts of things that we are working with our individual students on. And some kids are good at figuring it out and some kids really need more help. Our K-8 in my district we are definitely lacking in the career prep, probably because we haven't always had school counselors and we've had a lot of turnover. So having some consistency to build off of, we haven't had that within my district. So that's why our 9-12 program down to 7 and 8, because we can do more with them. They're here in our building, has been more solid. But I worry, it's hard to explain a lot of this and costs and things like that. I think what else? And then COVID has just added on that much more. Students are tending to stay closer to home when they're thinking about college. They're very worried. That is real. They also know they did not do well with online classes. So it's hard when, a year ago, their offer might have been only online classes. Well, why do I want to do that? Why do I want to stick with Pomona when you're only giving me online classes? And I said, because you're not paying for it, dear student of mine. You have a full ride. You're going to do those classes. So trying to manage that. And again, we're not always here with them for those. And I think just the nature of what we do as school counselors and how many things we are balancing, it's hard to keep track of all of this stuff coming at us all the time. And now it's harder because we have these more immediate needs for students. So their mental health needs and their anxiety needs are huge, and that means less time for the college and career counseling. I think that's everything that I had.
Much, Hillary. I'm thinking, Representative Crockett, if you have a quick question, but I'm thinking maybe if we have everyone present and do questions at the end, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so let's.
I'm happy to go next.
Melissa, kick it over to you.
Okay, so I am at Oak Hill High School. This is my 23rd year here. So this is the only place I've ever been a school counselor. I was a teacher before that. We have 400 students. We have 2 counselors. We split it pretty evenly. So I have about 200 students. As Hillary I took notes. I had the whole thing prepared, but as Hillary spoke, I was like, oh, I should mention that. So bear with me if I ad lib here a little bit. So on top of my caseload of the students, I'm responsible for creating the master schedule for the school. I meet with all those students about their schedules. I oversee any of our students who are outplaced at like special purpose schools. I am the dual enrollment coordinator. I'm the test coordinator for AP, PSAT, SAT. I'm responsible for our budget. I coordinate K-12 counselors. And like Hillary, I'm a member of our technical center, Lewiston Regional Technical Center. I co-chair a counselor group through the WMEC. I'm a member of our student assistance team. We also have a BAR program, which is building assets, reducing risks. I'm a member of 2 teams. We have 4 teams. I'm a member of 2 of them, and I attend weekly meetings on that. And then student assistance team and crisis team, and then would be in charge of crisis response for students on my caseload. So when I'm not doing all of those things, I am trying to get to students and doing presentations and delivering information. So unlike K-8 schools, we don't have what we would call like a guidance special, I guess, at the at the high school level. So oftentimes in K-8, students have a 40-minute, 30-minute class with their school counselor. At the high school, we really rely on teachers, in my school anyway, letting us into their classes when we need to present information because we really don't have another means to get that to them. So my English department is great. They do let me in. I present to juniors, usually starting in February on post-secondary. And from that, similar to Hillary, it may be an apprentice program, the military, 2-year, 4-year college, a realm of things, workforce, whatever they think they might be heading in a direction. And then that is followed up by individual meetings with each of those juniors with their school counselor to really individualize what their plan may be. And then we pick up on that when they enter as seniors, another presentation in those English classes to get the general information out to them, followed up by individual meetings with seniors. And it used to be like we would do a senior interview, and for some students, 1 meeting is enough, and some students need 4, some students need 10. So I just say to them, you come in as many times as you need, and I will always help you with that process. So I'm working with seniors often, sometimes the same ones weekly. We no longer have an advisory program. There used to be a means to maybe have some of that information on career delivered, but that program went away several years ago. So that was kind of a loss, definitely. We did have a career essentials graduation requirement for grade 10. Students had to come in and take that course. That has changed recently and kind of morphed with a personal finance and career course that students have to take for a semester in either grade 10 or 11 or 12. So there is still some exposure to that career course that is offered as part of our graduation requirements. So I feel like I'm able to individualize more with juniors and seniors being in their class a bit. I host sessions. We have a 20-minute period every day called Rater Connection, where all teachers are available to students, so students can really see anyone they need. And I'll often host, along with my other school counselor, sessions in the auditorium on different topics for students to come in around career, college applications, financial aid, whatever the need be given the time of year. Grade 10 also, Hillary mentioned, we had a regional career fair for something like 20 years. So it ran for a long time, and COVID has really, kind of put a halt to that for now. I hope that we can get back to it, but that was something all sophomores participated in, and I think was a pretty powerful opportunity. And I also take all students on tours of our technical center. I'm glad that we're going to be able to do that in person again this year. And I do take all sophomores because, my theory is they don't know what they don't know. So they may say, I'm not interested, I don't want a program over there, but they really don't know until they go and see. So I really think exposure on that is key. So we do take the sophomore class. As far as getting information out to, parents, we're really relying on email, newsletters. I have a guidance Google Classroom for my 11th graders and my 12th graders, where I really try to post information and parents can join that. Attendance at my parent nights has always been generally low, even pre-COVID. And so our virtual ones were pretty low attended, but, we're always willing to do them to, even if we can reach 5 parents, it's something. So we continue. I can't say enough about FAME, similarly to Hillary. I know that Jess or Mila or anyone is a phone call or an email away, always able to help. I called them, I have a senior this year. So I've called them myself to be like, hey, help me understand this. So they are wonderful. I have seen the college application rate and then the college going rate really decline. Maybe over the past 5 years, definitely since COVID, but I think we were on a dip before that. The community college application rate and going rate, though, has greatly increased. And I agree with what Hillary said. Students are savvy. They know that they can go, that it's an excellent value. And I also agree with her that kind of maybe, I don't know if stigma is the right word, but it's much more acceptable to go to community college and to get that education and, perhaps have your 2-year degree or then transfer. So I feel like we've definitely seen our 2-year rate increase, and the majority of our students go to Central Maine Community College or Southern Maine. I do have a few that venture to Western Maine, especially if they are studying to be an electrician. That's a very popular program there. I will say that we have, as far as we have a dual enrollment course offerings through Thomas College and UMaine Fort Kent. So that's been really excellent. Like I've seen those numbers increase every single year. And we have really been able to steadily continue to offer them. I've seen a big decrease in AP courses as students are taking advantage of the dual enrollment and less so for AP. Another thing I wanted to point out as far as the technical center is, we don't have enough seats. I could fill those seats over and over again. When I can send one student to an electricity program, but I have 8 students apply, that's really hard. Who gets that seat? Who needs that seat? So we need those technical center seats, as many as we can get in all of our districts. I know that's not true just for us, but in other areas. We had a MELMAT grant for years, and that was like the most amazing thing that could have happened to our school. We did a lot of great visits. Every grade level did a college visit. We did out-of-state visits for the first time ever, and that exposure was key. Some of those students had never been out of the state of Maine. Some of them had never been as far as Portland. So them getting on a bus, going to colleges, eating in a cafeteria, seeing a dorm, helped them to envision, maybe I could do this. And seeing other students that were maybe similar to them there made it more of a reality. So we did have Gear Up for a time. I will say that it was a bit harder to work with. Melmac was just really easy to work with and had a lot of opportunities. We do Embark, so we take advantage of that. We had a MERC grant in the past that helped pay early college courses. The fee now is great not to have that fee, but books can still be an issue for students. So trying to figure out ways to help them with affordability. And I'm just kind of looking over to make sure. So some of the barriers I would say in my area, the lack of parent education and engagement with the process. So many first generation, college, first generation students whose families are nervous, they're scared, they don't know, they don't understand the process. I had a student come in yesterday with his financial aid award letter and just said, we have no idea what this means. Can you explain it to me? So just really, they don't know, and many will ask questions, but many more will not reach out for help, and we try to help whoever we can, but we don't always know. So trying to offer support for those first generation, and to any students who need assistance. And then one of the things I think, as far as keeping, Hillary mentioned this, as far as like what I do to try to keep up to date with what's going on, I attend as many workshops, the Melmac Peer Learning College Board. I was a member, I sat on a national committee and a New England committee for College Board up until just prior to COVID. FAME conferences, like taking advantage of anything that is thrown our way for training, education that we can then pass along to our students. And I will say, I just want to put this plug in though for my administration. I feel like with everything that we're asked to do as school counselors, and our plate just gets fuller and fuller and fuller, and I think not much goes away. I will say in my district, I've had great support from my administrators. I don't have a lunch duty. I don't have a hall duty. I don't have before or after school, because they recognize that our time with students is the most value they can get from us. And so I just wanted to give a plug, because I know that's not the case everywhere that, you go, and I hear some horror stories along the way. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew that. So I think that's what I have, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end after everyone's presented. So thank you.
Not sure who wants to jump in next, but thank you so much, Melissa.
I'm willing to go next from Fort Kent. Job responsibilities are real similar to Melissa and Hillary. I also work on building the master schedule with the principal, do scheduling with all students 9 through 12. Fort Kent Community High School has 250 students, 9 through 12. And I am the only guidance counselor for the 250 students. I also do the early college coordination with UMFK primarily, test coordinator, crisis response, I do a lot of in-class meetings with students, 9 through 12, with regards to doing the advising for career pathways and post-secondary pathways and financial aid. We have a warrior time, which happens every day for 30 minutes, and students are assigned to their grade level teachers. They're free the teachers are all free during that time for extra help, as well as we also use that time to deliver guidance information through warrior time as well. A couple of programs we have addition that are a little bit different is we have 8th graders attending our St. John Valley Technical Center for 1 quarter to get an idea as to how, whether they see themselves going to the tech center. While they're there for the quarter, they can pick out 2 programs that are available that they are in. While they're there, they also take health and they also take a career preparation course. So the 8th graders do that. And for the past couple of years, we have piloted letting 10th graders go to the tech center earlier on than going in their junior and senior year. We're a little bit different. We have seats available at our tech center. So that's why we have the availability to send 8th graders over for a quarter and send 10th graders a little bit earlier. So we really try to front load and try to get students interested in career and technical preparation classes early on. For our dual enrollment, since we're right next door to UMFK, we're right on the same campus. We have 6 early college classes that our faculty teach. And then we have numerous students who are taking early college courses online. So our early college, like Hillary and Melissa, is pretty robust, and we try to push that as much as we can to have students see themselves being successful in early college courses, which really help them with their, their motivation, their sense of self-esteem to get seeing themselves going on to college after they graduate. All of our teachers we have probably 4 or 5 teachers per grade level team, and they also help us with the different themes going through each of the grade levels. So in the 9th grade is about building aspirations and getting them to know their learning style. They typically are taken over to UMFK. For the past couple of years, because of COVID, we haven't been able to do this, but students usually go over in person to UMFK. They sit into different panels, whether it be alumni who have graduated from Fort Kent Community High School to talk about their pathway and how they got where they did. We have community members on the panel to talk about what's needed in the community for local jobs and so forth. And what it takes for soft skills and everything to be in a particular career. And then we also have a panel of upperclassmen who talk about resiliency and how they made it through 4 years of their high school career. So we really, really miss that program, and we're really hoping to put it in next year back in play, hopefully once we get through COVID. In the sophomore year, our focus has been in on career prep. Our sophomore team do a career workshop for 2 days where different panelists also come in from the community to talk about different career pathways. And then our sophomore teachers also talk about different aspects of financial literacy, soft skills. Again, we seem that we want to keep hitting students and reminding students about their needs for soft skills, as well as financial literacy each year to help them roll along in their developmental education. After the sophomore year, we also used to go down to University of Maine at Presque Isle and do an in-person career fair. Again, for COVID, we haven't done that for the past couple of years, but we have been doing virtual job tours as well as virtual career fairs to replace that. In the junior year, our focus is to do college and looking at college searches. Our junior team usually takes students down on 2-day overnight college tour of Southern Maine and Middle Maine colleges. And again, for the past 2 years, we haven't been able to do that. So our replacement is doing virtual college tours. So that's what we've done for the junior year. In the senior year, something really exciting that we were able to put in place for this year is we have a senior seminar class that runs for first semester, and where our business teacher takes them through the college process, helps them with college applications, again, financial literacy, financial aid. We also do a team financial aid night for parents, either virtually or in person. So that new senior sim course has been really exciting. Before that time, it was myself going into either the social studies classes or English classes and giving out that information, and then following up with seeing them all one-on-one to go over their plan. And like Melissa, seeing them multiple times, whatever help they needed. Let's see, going forward, some of the things that have been really working well for us is our early college program, and the state of Maine being so generous with the aspirations money to help students pay for those early college courses has been really good. We also work with the Upward Bound program and Trio Talent Search. We have had a MELMAC grant as well as a Gear Up grant that the MELMAC grant helped us with the college tours going downstate. And then the Gear Up grant has helped us with doing after school tutoring and helping students stay on track. A lot of our students with COVID have been really struggling with trying to stay connected, trying to stay on track with their credits and everything. So that was our focus with our Gear Up grant, to catch students, making sure they're not falling through the cracks and staying on track for their graduation. Trying to think if there's anything else I'd like to share. Struggles that we're having, just keeping connected with students. We've been really fortunate for the past year and a half that we've been able to stay in person. So we're really lucky that we've been able to deliver all our programming in person. Trying to think, I think that's about it for now.
Thank you. I think that goes to me now, Hillary. Awesome. Thank you so much, Catherine. That was great. And to a mad respect for all the school counselors that have already spoken. And thank you to Representative Crockett and Senator Daughtry for inviting us, and to all the committee members who are listening to us talk today. So I am a school counselor at Portland High. I used to work at Biddeford High before that. And then for a good bunch of years, I was a college access, Trio College Access Program, Upward Bound staff member and director. So lots of love for the whole college access piece. School demographics for Portland High, and there's similar at Deering and Casco Bay High School in Portland, are we have 43% students of color. Many of our students are new immigrants or second generation plus immigrants. We have 32% English language learners, about 41% free lunch, and more students who are undocumented and seeking asylum. And then again, many students that are the sons and daughters of Portland's professional families and Portland's working class families. Let's see, for me, other tasks that I work on in addition to sort of my school counselor role are master schedule, PSAT and SAT testing, leadership teams, a bunch of other things that are very similar to the other counselors. The other counselors in my school also pick up many tasks. We really split those tasks up. And so those could be anything from 9th grade team meetings, AP coordination, the science test coordination, IEP meetings, helping to manage the many great resource programs like Upward Bound and Embark and Olympia Snow Leaders and other programs that come into our school but need some attention to have the students be with them. Managing new enrollments, attendance, the classroom guidance we do, interpreted conferences, basically, I think that it's a very exciting job. I talked to a school counselor at a middle school today, and she said, well, I'm never, ever bored. One of my other colleagues said, like, we just would like people to know that counselors across the board, especially high school counselors, are pivoting constantly. And it's not necessarily super sustainable to do all of the things we're doing. And so that some things kind of fall off the plate sometimes. For Portland High specific, in terms of post-secondary plans, for the class of 2021, about 72% of students, are headed off to four-year college, or were headed off to four-year college. Only 11% for two-year schools, and typically we're more like 60% four-year colleges and 20% two-year colleges. But last year, kind of an increase in students intending to go to four-year college. Still, 8 or 10% of students headed off to employment, a few students a year to the military. About 4.5 or 5% of students headed to a gap year, and I think that was directly COVID related. Some of the things that myself and my team are working on that we're really proud of is that we did institute during COVID, because it was really hard to get a hold of students when we were mostly online for a year, especially with our upperclassmen. We instituted junior and senior planning classes. And so for the second half of junior year and for the first half of senior year, students meet weekly, once a week, with their counselor during our block 5 or support block. And we all deliver the same curriculum each week. And that's the kinds of things you would hope we were doing: interest inventories, career and college searches, resumes, financial aid, having students really run and become educated about those net price calculators and comparing financial aid packages, that kind of thing. And then senior year, we're really helping students actually do those applications for those jobs, college, connecting with the military, helping them complete their FAFSAs. In addition to that, we're still doing the individual meetings with seniors in the fall, and those individual meetings with juniors in the spring. What I think we've found from doing a lot of group guidance is that students still also really need that one-on-one time for their specific plans or their specific questions. Even though they will ask in class, they still want and need that individual attention as well. College essays are generally covered, although counselors look at a lot of them in our English 12 classes, so we feel really good about that. So these junior and senior planning classes that we're doing have been a significant positive change in terms of most students attending those and having access to exploring careers and multiple pathways and learning about all their future options. So it's really been a great opportunity. Attendance hasn't been perfect, so I don't want to make this sound like the panacea. It happens during the last block of a day, which is a support block. So sometimes, teachers ask to see those students. Many of our students are working or doing athletics and are sometimes not able to be there. And also, many of our students are applying to go directly to work, or for two-year colleges, the kinds of research they need to do, or the kinds of things they need to do senior year, involve less time than those students applying to four-year colleges. So again, we're feeling pretty good about how we're giving some access to our juniors and seniors. For sophomores, I think this is the kind of much neglected group. I think for school counselors, we do 2 different classroom visits, one set in our biology classes and one set in our early US history classes. And we make sure that our sophomores and juniors have access to PATHS, our regional vocational center, and sort of trade information and trade and arts opportunities. So we feel good about that. For our 9th graders, we have a program called Freshman Seminar that our teachers run, our team of teachers run, but counselors do an initial welcome in that freshman seminar, followed by individual one-on-one meetings with students. And then later in the year, for freshman year, counselors organize for those classes, SMCC and USM coming to just talk about their programming, a variety of military people coming to talk about their programming, and then Florica, or another great FAME staff member, doing some really great early financial aid awareness for those students so that they know that financial aid exists and a little bit about how it works. Also in freshman seminar that counselors are not necessarily doing, our students are taking interest inventories and beginning to explore careers and colleges in 9th grade, which we feel really good about. In addition, we try for general information to make sure we send information to parents via email and texts, via our newsletters, via guidance Google Classrooms that other counselors have mentioned, and through Naviance. We are still holding our admissions and aid info nights and the complete, we intended to have a complete FAFSA nights, although FAME's done a great job for supporting with that this year, and every year. They're actually the major supporter of that. I would say in general, we feel good about the turnouts at those nights, but it's really not a super high portion of our overall parent base. So we could still use a lot of work there, but we are offering them. Let's see, Portland High has some good dual enrollment with the University of Southern Maine for our calculus and statistics and sort of high level math classes, and through an African American history course that we're offering. Our AP and early college numbers are robust. Now we're pretty lucky here in Southern Maine with all of the opportunities at USM and SMCC, and then all of the opportunities, online opportunities across the state. So we feel really great about that as well. Pre-COVID, we took our junior class to a couple colleges. They would be able to choose a couple colleges to visit, and those schools are USM, SMCC, St. Joe's, UNE, CMCC, Bates, and UNH, and we have not been able to do that during COVID. So I think that's been a big loss for our students. So let's see, challenges that I think that we face in Portland, that our sophomores are pretty underserved in terms of learning about careers or future options. Our ninth graders would be if our school didn't have a freshman seminar class. And I think most of our juniors and seniors would say they would like even more one-on-one time than we're actually able to give. So I think in general, students need more classroom time around careers, their personalities, their interests, all those multiple pathways for college and for aid. And it's really hard to have counselors doing the classroom guidance pieces of things and meeting one-on-one with students for the post-secondary planning to help them succeed in school, and for the growing social, emotional, and mental health needs of students. So I think in general, one of the pitches I want to make is I think that high schools likely across the state, and not just here in our more urban district for Maine, really need more counselors and more funding for classes that cover these topics for students. Let's see, I would say mental health has been a really serious issue for a really wide range of our students post-COVID or during COVID. So that's been something that's been really important and really time consuming for our teachers and for our social workers and for our counselors. So just to make sure I mention that. And again, very much like the rural areas, we have a lot of students who need to work, who need to be at jobs, who are self-supporting or supporting their families. What I hear and see from students and families about all these issues are that they'd like more time to explore options. I think that the students are kind of overwhelmed by the choices because they have so many of them. There's some concerns around standardized testing and if students should take the tests or not and how they'll be used. Lots of concerns about affordability and accessing aid, which I'll talk more about. Students' concerns about their own academic and emotional readiness for those next steps. Family concerns about really limited college visits or only online visits, and truly limited access for students who are low income or will be first generation college students. And real concerns about accessibility of college given financial aid for many low income students, and especially in Portland, and I think it's similar in Lewiston, for our undocumented and asylee seeking students. I think families would agree about the mental health, anxiety, and depression concerns are really hard these last few years. Because of COVID, students also have a lot of online course fatigue. Like I think I mentioned that we also use Google Classroom to get information out to our students, but they are bombarded by Google Classroom announcements. For us, the support programs like Jobs for Maine graduates, Make It Happen, which is a special program in the Portland Public Schools to help immigrant students get ready to succeed in school and get ready for college, has been really important. The Boys and Girls Club, Upward Bound, other TRIO programs have been really helpful in helping us meet the needs of our students. I talked to a middle school counselor this morning, and there is some career prep happening in middle schools, but especially because of the mental health issues, that's been less in the last 2 years than it maybe would have been in previous years. We have worked as a 9-12 counselor group for Portland to make sure that we are offering a bunch of different like admissions and financial aid night events. And we feel pretty good about something we created just called Understanding the American College Process. That's really for all families, not just immigrant families, but we are providing interpretation for those nights for our many immigrant families. And we've seen some positive play out of that. So what do I think would be great programs, policies, and investments that we should either keep doing or consider? I've got a nice list for you. So Maine State Scholarship, please increase it. Continue that funding for the Great Finance Authority of Maine, staffers and materials. This has been a really wonderful resource, and we are so grateful for all the work that Florica and Jess and even Martha have done at Portland High. So really important to continue funding Maine for that access. We really appreciate the connections to admissions and aid people across the public and private colleges here in Maine. So great support from them as well. Again, feel really good about our early college access for our students taking classes and defraying those college costs. Definitely appreciate that fee removal. It sounds like we should be talking about funding books for students if we want to increase that access. I would say too, we would really like those state tuition increases to remain low. Those keeping tuition low has really helped, I think, our middle and high income families. But students from low income backgrounds, unless they're living at home and attending SMCC or USM, really have a lot of unmet need, over $6,000, including that's after federal loans. So it's really tough to afford to be able to live on campus at Orono or USM or even Farmington, and certainly at our private colleges. So I do think for our low income students, aid is still a really big deal. Would love to increase the pitch to pay for AP exams. Access to 4-year colleges and really 2-year colleges for our undocumented students and our asylum seeking students is a dire need. I think it's really hard for our 17 and 18-year-old students to understand what debt burden really means and like how they should be making choices around that debt burden. So I think whatever we can do to increase family involvement across the state would be really, really important. I wanted to say that I really appreciate that how the private and public institutions across the state have gone away from the need for the SAT or Accuplacer scores for admission and for placement and for merit aid. So really appreciate all of that. But it's becoming an issue at the community college level that without that SAT or Accuplacer testing, that we have some students that are really look like they're ready on paper or the way that the community colleges are looking at students, but in fact are probably ready for remedial classes at SMCC or at another community college and not necessarily yet ready for college level classes. And so we have some growing concern here in Portland about what I know is an intention to be open access, but in some cases we've got students in classes they're not ready for that they're failing out of. So something that we're pretty concerned about there. We also really appreciate the way adult education, which I don't think we've talked about much here yet, has really been helping to bridge some of the readiness gaps that our students might have in high school. So wanted to just make sure that I mentioned adult ed. I think another thing that our school talks about are sort of those, just the learning changes or the learning gaps due to COVID. So we definitely have students that have not learned as much academically. They may have learned a lot more social emotionally, but academically because of COVID. I'd also love to make a pitch for money for college visits for students, somehow embedded in either school budgets or the state budget for students. And again, I would love to have there be, I think, more school counselors, more opportunities at our vocational and technical centers. And for the personal finance requirement, I think we all mentioned a little bit about personal finance, but we wish that the personal finance requirement was similar to the health requirement, that it's a separate class and that it definitely happens. And right now, I think schools across Portland and across the state are really attacking that personal finance requirement quite differently. So it would be nice to see some unity around that. And that for me is it. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Johanna. And I think we just have Mark left.
Caribou High School. The amazing thing is we don't have any snow. So that in and of itself should surprise most people. It does me. Caribou High School has about 470 students. We picked up about 55 students, and I'm not sure why this year. I think COVID has a lot to do with it and the transitory nature of our population now. And that's been real welcoming because we always need more students. In the past, we've had about 85% of our students going on to post-secondary education, which has been something that we've been very proud of for a small rural school. And so that, however, I think COVID has had an impact on that. And I don't exactly know why. I think we're just seeing a lot more kids being more disconnected in general. And I think, we're seeing it with people quitting their jobs and moving around and just people just in flux. And we're seeing more attendance problems and more mental health issues and more failure. And I think so. I think the worst is down the road. Most of these kids are affected now. Our seniors started out in a normal school year. It's the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors that are going to be the most affected. And I fear what impact that will have in coming years on school attendance and college placement rates and those kind of things. So I think we're just going to have to hang on and intervene as we see fit as we go along and see those kids down the road. And I think one of the things, and I'm just going to speak about the college affordability and how in the secondary placement rate, one of the things that's been the most helpful, had the biggest impact on our kids going to college has been the FAFSA. Let's face it, the FAFSA is the crux, is the backbone of students going on to college. Without that FAFSA being completed, it doesn't happen, especially for a school in our community. So one of the things that we've done in the past that we haven't been able to do in the past few years is a member of FAME usually came up and presented to all our senior English classes. Each kid got started with the FAFSA, explained what the FAFSA was, the importance of it, and that hasn't been able to happen in the past few years because FAME wasn't able to get into our classroom, understandably. So we look for that to happen again. We look for them to get into in every senior would start a FAFSA. And that is something that's been very crucial. So we do, like a lot of my colleagues, my overworked colleagues, it sounds like very much to me, that we have a dual enrollment program. The average student leaves Caribou High School with about 30 credit hours of college credit. So when you take that into consideration, I've often made this statement that college is never been more affordable in terms of the fact they're getting 30 college credit hours free. And I'm always a little bit resentful because my children went through and just before this whole thing started and they didn't take advantage of that, nor did I. So, but for our kids now, it is something that's very, very important. And it's sort of become expected and taken advantage, just taken advantage of wildly. So we're real happy about that. And we certainly would look for the state of Maine to help continue funding that, those college courses. It's a bargain for our kids. Beyond that, we do a virtual job shadow. I think that's very, very noteworthy. We use the virtual job shadow program, and we've used to, like a lot of schools that I've heard, used to go to regional career fairs, but COVID has kind of put an end to that. So, the virtual job shadow has over 1,000 jobs represented, and they hear shadows and they can do interest inventories, and that's, very important. And, we try to keep the emphasis on academics, because if the students aren't prepared for college academically, then it's all for naught, right? So we got to make sure to keep our academic standards up, at the same time keeping our balance with this COVID stuff and making sure that we push them along and, those kind of things. But at the same time, we have to maintain that delicate balance of keeping our academic standards up and supporting kids. So that's a balance that I'm sure most schools are making. And in terms of AP, our AP program, we have 17 dual enrollment courses, and we have 8 AP classes. And those have, kids are still enrolling in the AP classes. They're just not taking the exams anymore. And that's, largely the dual enrollment classes have been the culprit and what's behind that. Kids are saying, I've got a sure thing, it's going to happen, and I don't have to take this exam, and they get kind of scared off by that. So we've got to work on that as a challenge somehow to get our AP. And I think if we could get some, funding certainly would be helpful to have every, I know some schools make it mandatory that the kids take the AP exam. We can't mandate that because we'd have to pay for it, and that's something that we just haven't been able to do. But I think I would love to have that happen too, that we would have a situation where if a student is taking an AP class, they have to take the AP exam. That way there's certainly more buy-in along the way. If students know they've got to take the exam, at the end, they will be more likely to buy into the course and do their very best with it versus try to maybe not. So in the last thing I want to mention is just sometimes students get in trouble with when they start taking out student loans their first or second year, and all of a sudden some kind of monkey wrench gets thrown in it and they don't finish. So what happens at that point is they're walking around with debt, but no degree. And that's the worst of both worlds. And so somehow we've got to communicate to kids that if you're going to start this process, by God, finish it. Somehow you've got to finish it, because that's the last thing you want to go, is because it's not like they can repo it like a car or a house, but they're going to have to pay that back. So just be real careful, because that's the worst of both worlds, is having a debt with no degree. And I don't think that we've all done enough to communicate that little scenario, which life happens sometimes, and they don't get to finish up the 4-year degree, and they get in the situation where they don't go back, and it's that, and then yet they're gonna have to start paying for that. So that's, and I think we just need to do more about that scenario for sure, because that's a reality that happens. So with that, I won't belabor my points anymore, and I appreciate the opportunity to hear other folks. It seems like we all kind of share the same frustrations, and it's the same things going on in most schools here in the state of Maine right now. And I thank you very much.
Okay, and then thank you. So that's all the high school pieces. And then we've got Deb Drew here from Hudson to talk about the counselor education side.
Thank you, Hillary, and thank you all of the school counselors. For all of you on the commission, would you please join me in gratitude to these school counselors for all of the hard work that they do. It's always amazing to me to listen to them talk about the work they do. And every bit of it is true. I can attest to that. So thank you. Just quickly, my own background is also as a school counselor in Maine for 20 plus years before I came into higher education. I was a school counselor in Bucksport, at Katahdin High School in Sherman, Maine, and also at Stearns High School in Millinocket. So I have deep empathy for all of the people you just heard from. I've been in your shoes, know where you are. At the same time, I also keep my ear to the ground as a counselor educator now by providing some supervision to teams of school counselors around the state, and also coaching for the Melmac Foundation for their grants. And I can tell you that this group of people is doing, all of them are doing every bit of the work that they just described to you. And they are responding currently to the greatest mental health crisis, now declared a national crisis in our country for among children and adolescents that we have experienced in recorded history. I'm sure there have been other times in our history where mental health crisis has been as high, but the data right now is higher than it has ever been in terms of mental health crisis. So I think if you really drill down with each of these people, what you're hearing is that they are struggling to provide all the wonderful proactive programming that they know how to do and do so well in a climate where they're having to continually react to the crises and mental health daily issues that are coming their way. So I just want to put it all in context for you and to support them in all the hard work that they're doing. My job today, though, is to talk with you a little bit about training and preparation for these school counselors. So I will shift to that. And I'd like to start by reiterating what many of them have said, but Hillary started us off with, is saying that one of the things that we teach and that the profession of school counseling believes strongly is that career and college readiness needs to begin pre-K and continue through high school and on into adulthood. It is not something that belongs just in the high school or just in the senior year. And you've heard people speak to this. The other point that I think is really important is that the school counseling professionals that you all are listening to today are the certified educators in Maine who have the training in career and college readiness and work in our schools. And I think people don't always understand that, especially as we try to sort out who are all the players in our schools providing things, roles in the name of mental health or counseling or social work within our schools. It is the school counselors who have that training and preparation. And I also want to add that the other challenge really facing all of us is the workforce shortage across all populations in Maine, but especially in education right now. There is a huge workforce shortage in education, as I think we all know. And so part of that is a shortage of prepared and trained school counselors, but it also is the fact that many of the people who are teaching and administering in our schools and our school counselors are having to carry other duties and other jobs in addition to the work that they do because of the workforce shortages, substitute shortages, bus driving shortages, cafeteria worker shortages. So again, the pressures are really high. So in terms of basic training of school counselors and how they're prepared, if you could bear with me for a second, I'd like to share my screen because I think the visual of a curriculum for school counseling is something that people aren't really aware of and would be helpful for you to see. I will say that unfortunately, my colleague from the University of Southern Maine, Nikki Correa, was unable to be with us today. She was invited. However, before I came to Husson, I worked for the University of Southern Maine, so I am familiar with their program. I worked in the counselor education program there. So I will, as I show you our curriculum, I will point out the similarities with our other Maine on-the-ground training program for school counselors as well. So this is Husson's curriculum, but we are, and so is the University of Southern Maine, a nationally accredited by the Council for the Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs, better known as CACREP, program. And that accreditation does drive the curriculum for counseling in the program at Husson and also in the program at the University of Southern Maine. So for school counselors, they get a significant background in counseling in particular. So how to be a counselor, how to engage in people. And by the way, this is master's level preparation. So all school counselors have to have completed a bachelor's degree and their school counselor training happens at the graduate level. So I say that in particular because when we talk about cost of college, and we talk about loans and what people have to do to get through, the very people who are helping others with this are incurring graduate level educational costs on top of their undergraduate level educational costs. And I think most of us know that traditional financial aid is limited once you get to the graduate level, mostly to loans. So I hope that the commission is also looking at the professions that require graduate level training and the cost of college at graduate as well as undergraduate level. Because of the fact that we are CACREP accredited, and CACREP has for many years now said that the preparation for school counseling should be 60 credits in length, we and the University of Southern Maine have been 60 credit preparation programs for some time now. So our students get 60 credits of graduate work that prepares them to become school counselors and to be certified as school counselors in Maine and also in other states across the country. As I said, they get a background in human development, research, working with multicultural issues and wide variety of cultural populations. They learn about theories and skills in counseling. They learn about ethical issues and how to do assessment. And many of them referred to the kinds of assessments that they use within the career and college population work that they do. They have a specific course in career development and counseling that does involve both theory and practice in how you do career development across the age span, and also includes preparation in basic financial aid information and how they access the resources for financial aid information. And then in the school counseling specific courses that they have, the role of the school counselor and the school counseling program classes, as well as during the all critical 600-hour internship that they have to engage in, where they are actually engaging in the schools in an internship under the supervision of a certified and experienced school counselor. They are further learning about the career and college readiness issues. School counselors, by their definition, are work in across 3 domains. They help students with academic success. They help them to become career and college ready, and they support them through all of the social and emotional issues that we all bring out of our lives into school, so that they can learn coping skills to overcome those issues and be successful academically and in their career and college readiness. So thank you for bearing with me while I gave you that example of how our students are trained. Just a couple of other quick things I want to reiterate. Yes, school counselors are doing individual and social emotional counseling every single day, but they are also, as you heard, at all levels, working with students to help them be academically successful and to discover the careers that they are interested in and suited for, and to prepare for the training and education necessary to be able to pursue those careers. And they're doing their best to try to work with parents as well to help educate parents. I think also they all made the point that preparing parents and families for the expense of college can't begin in high school. And so again, that need to begin way back in the early years, perhaps in PK and kindergarten registration, using school counselors at those levels to help parents understand, what does it mean to have a 529 account? How do you save for college? How do you do it and still afford to live, even if you're on a limited income? How can you be successful? What are all of these different options that we suddenly in high school start talking about, such as career and technical education, community colleges, private colleges, public universities? It's overwhelming what we have to know and what parents need to know in order to help their children really be successful. So one of the things that I would ask the commission to really consider is, how do we help not only keep the cost of college low, but fund the people that we need in our PK through 12 education to do the hard work to help parents and families get ready for the careers and college pursuits that they will, their children will pursue in the future. How do we overcome the shortage of school counselors that's out there right now? And honestly, from a preparation standpoint, how do we help people to understand that this is a great career to come into and get trained for? And how do we help them pay for the 60 credits of master's level coursework that they have to get through to get there? I will tell you that my students right now at Hudson University, my school counseling students, to a person, are employed long before they graduate in school counseling jobs. That's concerning to me, because primarily because some of them are taking jobs with just a very few credits in the program done. And I have huge concerns about whether they're really ready to be doing those kinds of jobs at this point. At the same time, there are people employed in our schools right now in school counseling positions who have no preparation as a school counselor as well because of the shortage. And I have even greater concerns for that. Fortunately, the Department of Education is telling those people that they do have to pursue the training, they do have to seek the certifications. And we are all working with them as best as they can when they come into our schools. But we need people with good, solid training and background out there doing this critical kind of work. So I think part of the issues that you're all addressing is greater than just how do we keep the cost of college as low as possible, but how do we also help prepare the people who help others understand how to navigate this system and do it in an affordable kind of way. And then I would close simply by adding my voice to the voices that have supported the work of the Finance Authority of Maine. I have been, throughout all of my career, very closely connected with the work that they've done. It is critical to this work in this state. To encouraging as best as we can the Melmac Foundation to, as they just figure out where to go next with their grant making, to revisit the grants that have been so critical to our K-12 schools to support this career and college readiness effort. They are one of the primary providers of professional development beyond the graduate training for our school counselors right now. And they're doing it for free under their grant program. They have, I think, helped more than any organization that I've been aware of, and their work also with Jason Judd and the Educate Maine program. I think, and thank you, Jason, for the wonderful conference that you all put on last week. And Melmac grantees were able to attend through the grant, attend that conference for free. They have offered opportunities for people to grow and learn in their skills in how to do good career education and financial aid support for students beyond what they get in their basic training in the graduate level. So supporting those organizations and helping to keep them going within our state as best as we can, even if it's just encouragement for them to keep going. I also want to speak about the Financial Aid Administrators Organization, the MISI group. They have volunteered their time through Melmac to all of the Melmac schools to provide support and education and direct help to families to complete that all important FAFSA, as Mark said, and to also interpret what financial aid means. So supporting the work of the MISI organization and applauding their work as volunteer financial aid people working in all of our colleges, but volunteering their time to the high schools to help parents and families with this process. I think that's all I have to say. You certainly have heard enough and you need time for questions. So thank you very much for having me here.
Deb, thank you very much. All of our presenters, from Hillary, Melissa, Catherine, Joanna, and Mark, so enough and so necessary for us to hear, what's happening at our K to 12 schools. Maddie has had to step away briefly to take care of some home things that she has to attend to. I want to check with Samantha and Becky with respect to how we're doing for time. And because on our agenda, we would be taking what looks like only a 10-minute noon break at this point. So I know I'm guessing there's probably a lot of questions from the presentations we just heard. So any thoughts on what we should do on the agenda?
Representative, I know that some of these counselors have just stepped away from very busy work that they've just so eloquently outlined to us, and have an expectation that they'll get back to that work as soon as they can. So I think it would be good to take questions now for them so we can dismiss them, maybe take a shorter break and come back for the final presentation, if that's okay with members of the commission, knowing that if they need to use the restroom or attend to other matters, they'll step away.
I see most heads nodding, so that's good. I will start. I'll have one question, then I know I have Senator Woodson and Representative Salisbury in the queue. Something I took from every one of the presentations was the need for more attention to career readiness and, in the curriculum. And I just wanted to make all the counselors aware that I was very excited to be the sponsor of LD 68, which went into law on October 19th. And what that is, it was added to the learning results to support life and career readiness education in Maine. At this point, I think it's a very positive first step. So many of what happens in the curriculum, of course, is decided at the local level. So I would encourage you all to obviously to take a look at that, and then, have deeper conversations with the local school board or whatever it is in your SAD. And because I agree with, I think it was Joanna who said, we should have a personal finance course right along, mandatory, along with like we do a health course. I think that was part of my testimony, ironically enough. And of course, within personal finance, I think it's easy to get into all of this FAFSA discussion, cost of education. So I think that's an opportunity that is now actually law, that we may be able to put some, some kind pressure on our local school folks and maybe elevate that to a permanent type of instruction. And I agree wholeheartedly that we all want to find things that we can do more to get to our students and our parents as early as possible. It's wonderful. Everything you're doing is wonderful. And yet you all acknowledge that, geez, if we could do it sooner, it would even be more impactful. And I think it would lead to action and be big. So I will stop there in the essence of time. I know I didn't really ask a question. I just kind of made you aware of LD 68. And I saw that Samantha posted that in the chat, so you can see that very readily. So let's move to Senator Woodson.
Thank you very much. Everyone mentioned how COVID has affected education in so many different ways. We've been in this for 2 years. Do any of you have any suggestions or recommendations on any changes that could be made with regard to what goes on in education. In other words, we've been at this, and I think we're going to continue to be in this situation for a while. What can be done and still be safe? Does that make sense? Does anybody have any ideas on that?
And just please jump in because there are a number of hands that are up. So I don't want to go there, Robert.
I would say we have taken, you've heard this in the news a bit, the Swiss cheese approach. We're trying to create a net of different strategies. So it just really depends. I think we have shown that we can keep our COVID rates down considerably relative to the community, be safe and still be mostly in person. And to do that, we had to spread the students out. We had to adjust their lunch schedules. We had to adjust how we run dorms. We had to adjust how we provide testing and encourage vaccinations. And so there wasn't really any one approach. It was many. The way we run our labs, we offer a lot more online, but that's not who we want to be in total. So we have spent a lot of time figuring out how we can still be in person. How we control crowds at our athletics. We still want to have those kinds of events too, or we're managing that very well. I think while we're seeing an uptick in Maine and the general population, you'll notice that the last I looked, it was something like 10% in general population and 1% in our system. And that's because of all of these efforts, not one. So that's what I would say.
Any other thoughts on Senator Whitsam's COVID question?
I didn't hear any adjustments to what is being done. I heard Mr. Panett say what is being done. I'm looking for something that what else could be done, or can we change how we're interacting to improve our education system? Do we need the limitations, all the limitations that we have? Do we need all these limitations?
So I'll respond quickly if I may. This is something I've given a lot of thought to, and I'll be brief because I think this is a topic that we could go off on for a very long time. But one of the things that I've seen as I've talked with people, particularly in the K-12 world, around the crisis that we're experiencing in schools and mental health right now, is the amount of stress that everyone is feeling. And I think part of that is because we are not really recognizing, at least in the K-12 world, that we are actually in a crisis. And we're trying to act like everything should be normal and that everybody should be doing all the same things that they always did before. And so there's a huge amount of pressure on teachers to keep academics going at the same level that they always have in the past, that they were always expected to be testing in the same ways that they always were. There's a huge amount of pressure on families to get their kids to school. And at the same time that we're dealing with large groups of quarantines that have to happen in the schools because of the spread of COVID. And that's without even getting into the contentiousnesses in our society around right now that affects every single human being. I think one of the best things that we could be doing right now is spreading hope and to recognize that we need to figure out what is absolutely essential and focus on those things in the crisis rather than trying to return everything to normal. We are anything but normal right now. So that's very philosophical, I realize, but I think it's this place to start in our conversation if we really want to move out of the stress and crisis and mental health crisis that we're in right now and move forward.
Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. I think that's a good point to keep in mind when we go back in January and start making these laws and recommendations.
Thank you. I'm glad to talk with anybody about that and further. And I realize this is probably not the time to continue on that path. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Deb, and thank you, Senator Woodson. Salisbury.
Thank you, Representative Crockett. And if I just wanted to respond really quickly to what Senator Woodson was saying, I think that one of the things that we're hearing is the mitigation strategies that people are using is working in schools and higher education, the vaccine clinics and the masking and the things, they are working, despite the fact that right now, as of today, we had 1,000 new cases of COVID, but within our schools, we're seeing some of these strategies working, which is good. So with that, if we can add that, what Deborah was saying, that sense of hope that some of these things are working and we can build on those and help people recognize that they are in a crisis and, help with those things is important. What I wanted to say, my question was, by doing that, by recognizing students that are getting ready for college. So some of these seniors may have not been in school for a long time, like in person or very sporadically. And I think it was mentioned earlier that, their thought of going to college and doing more online learning might be a barrier. So I'm wondering, how do we help students that just can't even handle the thought of going away to college and doing more online, and helping them realize, that there is that hope out there that this will change. I know my daughter's at USM. Most of her senior year was remote, very sporadic, and she's in her second year of college of a lot of online classes. She's living at home. It didn't make sense to take online classes and live on campus. So I'm wondering, how can we what, I don't know, legislatively or from your perspective, what can we do to help students that are looking at going away to college and not kind of give up on that?
Anyone who wants to take a stab at that one, jump
Yeah,
right in.
I can try a little bit to begin with. It makes me think of what in the past 2 years, anything with college has been a little more confusing, like a few extra layers. And we have to sit with those individual kids and figure it out college by college, because it's really different. Even with last year's class, thinking of them starting this fall, it was giving them that heads up of, maybe you want to look on the website and see if they have any information right now, which would have been last spring, on whether they're going to open fully or not. Or do they have any information about what they're doing about vaccines? Like all of those things that extra things kids had to think of. Check online and see if they're open this summer for visits, and you could go in person and see. So it added it on, but we have to figure it out college by college, but then with each individual kid. And we don't always have the time. We try to make that time to do that. And we had to recognize it. No one told us as school counselors, hey, this is what's coming at you. You got to figure this out. So you kind of had to figure it out kid by kid and be like, oh, wait, there's this other piece in all of this. So again, we just sort of sit waiting for well, what's the next thing that gets added to this? And what do we need to help them figure out? Because that's really, we've been doing that for years. That's part of what we do every single day, is problem solve with kids and meet them each where they're at. So COVID just added more layers, I think, to all of it.
I think maybe we could also, I wonder, talking more about some of the incentives and some of the Maine State Grant and some of the programs that are happening now that maybe would help with funding, and the cost of college now might be a good time, as and with the resources too. I don't know if that would be helpful.
Well, I would follow up on Hillary's comment to say that every individual is unique, and that's what the real challenge is, particularly with guidance counselors and as they arrive at college. But we can also recognize that each of the institutions to which they're aspiring have a variety of options. Here at Husson, we have face-to-face classes, we have hybrid classes, which are a combination of online and face-to-face, and then we have fully online. And so fitting that model of what is the best strategy for your learning and your opportunity outcome really is critical. And that does require a lot more investigation than just, okay, I know what they're going to offer. So I would reemphasize that notion of trying to fit for the individual. And that's a real drain on individuals in terms of the mission that we all have, is making sure that we're fitting all of those various needs.
And if I could respond quickly too, just two quick things. Overcoming the student's sense of not being good enough for college has always been a challenge, well before the pandemic, forever, as long as I've worked in the field. That's always been one of the biggest hurdles that we have, is kids' insecurity about whether they can be successful. And one of the things that has always shown to work more than anything else is to get the students out and on the college campuses so that they see that there really are people like them there. And that has not changed. So my answer would be, most of us are here and here in person on the college campuses. Let's get them here so that they can really come out of that sense of isolation and begin to feel more comfortable. Accessing, as President Clark says, accessing in whatever way is best for them, but recognizing that it comes out of a real place for them.
I could add to that really quickly.
Please.
We used to take kids to a lot of colleges, as I mentioned. I just got an offer from CM to bring a group of students over, and I have it arranged for March. I pushed it out as far as I could. I'm going to take some juniors, and they're going to cover the cost of lunch. That goes a long, long way with us. I can get a bus to a lot of places, but I can't pay for their lunch. And students don't have $10 for eating in the dining hall, and eating in the dining hall is huge. So I would say to those of you that are on this call, and from our colleges, that goes a long way. So if there's a way for you to get us lunch, we can get small groups there as it becomes safe, and like later in the spring with our juniors, and maybe get some baby steps back to that normalcy, because I could not agree more.
That is a great suggestion, and thank you for adding that, Melissa. President Clark, Deborah, and Hillary, thank you for your responses there. We do have one more person with a question in the queue. Martha?
Thank you. So actually not a question, but just something I want the school counselors to be aware of. I mentioned this during the last meeting, but I wanted to address a couple things. There was a mention of savings hesitancy. That's very real. It happens for a lot of reasons. People want to have access to emergency funding, and they don't think of a 529 that way. So they're a little scared. They don't identify as an investor, depending on what socioeconomic background they have. So we're very sensitive to that. There's a lot of myths out there about saving for college, and that it will hurt financial aid eligibility. So that's something we focus on within our college access team. But I just wanted you all to be aware that the FAME board approved 2 months ago additional funding for us to hire 2 college savings counselors. So they'll kind of mimic our outreach staff, but they will only work on college savings and trying to get families to understand the importance of saving early, but starting at any time. We don't want to exclude our high school students or our middle school students. And so we're very pleased that those 2 individuals will start in January, and it will be a very high touch model. But we want to see if we can help move the needle by educating families, making them feel more confident, whether it's a 529 they pursue, which we hope they do because we have matching grants, or whether or not it's some other savings vehicle that they pursue. So I just wanted to put that out there for the school counselors to be aware of. And then we also, because of our board expanding funding for us, we have expanded our financial education team. So you will see expanded financial education efforts coming from FAME. It's something that's near and dear to our heart. We will be engaging a behavioral science firm to help us really examine our messaging and our services to make sure it's resonating with the people that we're trying to reach. So as I hear more of you talk about the personal finance requirement or the expansion of financial literacy as it relates to college affordability, that is something that we're very focused on, and we understand that it has far-reaching tentacles in people's ability to afford college, because the one lever that they can pull are some of those things they can do with their own financial wellness. So I just wanted to mention those two comments, and then I'd be completely remiss if I didn't acknowledge that my son's school counselor is on screen. So I just want to thank Johanna Burden. He wasn't really a problem child, but he wasn't the easiest one either, I'm sure. But he's now a college graduate, and I can't thank her enough for all the support she gave him when he was at Portland High.
Thank you, Martha. You're most welcome.
Thank you for those comments, Martha. And just a huge shout out to all the counselors that were able to join us this morning. Hillary, Melissa, Catherine, Joanna, and Mark, and of course, Deb. Hillary's probably going to stay with us after the break, but this seems like a good time to take a break. And Sam, tell me if I'm rushing them back too quickly, if I say 12:30.
I think it would probably be best to actually give a little less time because some people may have hard stops at 1, and we know we want to hear from our early college folks. So could we do 12:25?
We could. And so I'll stop talking. Let's take a break and everybody come back at 12:25.
Thank you.
Do we dial back into the same site to get back in?
Yes, Dave.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
that was just a wonderful presentation this morning. And give it a couple more seconds here to see everybody get back before we go on to our first presentation of the afternoon, which is going to be Pathways to College and Careers with Less Debt, Public Early College in Maine. So Amy and Mercedes, let's hold on for a sec. And of course, I'll have to toggle down here to see.
I think we've got most everyone, Ed, but I'm going to let you keep holding on to the gavel as I'm running back and forth. But I think we're ready to start.
You think we're good? All right. So on that note, I'm going to turn over the Zoom call to Amy Hubbard, who is University of Maine System Early College Executive Director, as well as Mercedes Poor, who is the Maine Community College System Director of College Access. Ladies, take it away.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to go through the PowerPoint pretty quickly because we wanted to make sure to leave time for questions at the end. So why early college? The question used to be, is early college effective? And now we really need to we know that early college is effective. Our state data and our reflects national data that early college really checks all of those boxes. So students who have our programs more likely to go to college, persist, they have higher GPAs. And we really like to promote the fact that if students have greater success when they're in college, they're going to leave with less debt. I heard the concern of students leaving college, not completing a degree, and then having that debt burden. And so early college really does help students complete that degree. Early college benefits all students, but our data show that it benefits underrepresented students most. For example, for students of color, the graduation rates are up to 33% higher when you have early college students compared to non-early college students.
And I'll just say before I begin that I'm thrilled that the commission is seeing early college as one of the levers in terms of affordability. I think that what we need to focus on as we give you this kind of broad understanding of our efforts in the state thus far is really making sure we're making college more affordable for more students as well. So not just more affordable, but really expanding access. And when we think about expanding access, but Amy, I think I lost our slides there for a moment. I think it's good to just see the historical development of early college because it has changed a lot in the last 5 years. So when we're thinking about early college, this has actually been around for a long time. AP, IB, you used to be able to go to summers, to campus on a summer and take an elite college course. Those dual credit opportunities have been around for a long time, but as our counselors actually alluded to, they had both a high cost and really high barriers to enrollment. And as early credit opportunities have evolved, especially recently, what we've seen is we've been able to lower those barriers to enrollment and really bring the cost down. And what our two systems have tried to do really in tandem over the past 5 years is really identify and address those barriers. So when we think about, and Amy, you can change the slide, when you think about what's going on in Maine right now and what it looks like, I will caution you that my bubbles here are more or less representative, but they are not exactly to scale in terms of enrollment. But when we think of college experience, students going onto a campus and taking a early college class with a college professor surrounded by other college students, we actually have a number of those programs going on where students leave their high school. And I believe our Fort Kent counselor alluded to this because there's 3 of those programs in this state. Pleasant Street, Telstar High School, and then the Maine Community College has our Spring Ahead program. Students actually leave their high schools and take the bulk of their credits on a college campus. Very small number of participants though, for obvious reasons, because you have to live close and you have to have access. And then there's those classes that we heard about where students are taking normally scheduled college courses, either on the campus, not so much during COVID, or online, which did expand a little bit during the COVID time. Those, again, wonderful college experience, but not accessible to all students for various reasons. So now you see the Bridge Academy here, which provides these early college courses more in the high schools, but again, not a lot of students because there are some barriers to access. And most recently, and most importantly, all of our concurrent courses. And you heard the counselors again mention these. This is when a college course, college syllabus, college level content is being taught by a certified high school instructor inside the high school day. What this does is this lowers all of those barriers to access, and it means many more students have access to this early credit while they're still in high school. In terms of how all of this is operating in the state, this is really funded, and I think some people mentioned this, by our aspirations program in the state. Right now, students, publicly funded students in the state of Maine have access to 12 credits per year. I do want to caution you on that though, because we like to promote that number of 12 credits per year, but there's a little bit of a difference between what that says and the budget that is allotted to aspirations. If every student right now were to take 12 credits per year, we would not have the funding to do that. So as we think about really making sure this opportunity is getting to the students who will most benefit from it, we need to think about, can the program actually handle that kind of expansion in terms of its current funding or the current language. Right now, UMS is getting 50% of their tuition. MCCS is getting 100% of their tuition, but as you see, there's a difference in those two numbers. Our DOE partners really make sure that all of this is being processed, but at the end of the day, it's also the 14 colleges that are participating, the 14 publicly funded colleges that are participating, that are delivering this activity. And then I'll turn it over to Amy so that we can talk about how we do that together.
So from the beginning, when the University of Maine system really increased their efforts for early college, we partnered with the community college system, and Mercedes and I agreed that we were going to put students first. So we serve the students and we serve the state first, not necessarily our own institutions. And so that student-centered statewide collaboration is something that we're very proud of, and I think has really worked well in terms of equity and providing resources to our schools and to our school counselors, as you heard in the presentations earlier today. One thing that we're most excited about, we're really proud, is that we have this data sharing agreement. University of Maine system implemented an online course application system. And so all 7 of our campuses agreed to a shared application, shared process, shared workflow, database and credit tracking. And we work with the community colleges to get them on board as well. So for fall of 21, for the first time ever, it's really the first and only of its kind nationally, every student in Maine has access to all 14 of our public institutions with one shared portal. So we can now see the activity. Before this, we really didn't know the activity in the state. So I know it's hard to see, but what you're looking at is an inside of the portal. And you can see at the bottom that the student is taking a class at the University of Maine and at the York County Community College. So we want to make sure that students choose their credits wisely and that we do have folks on the other end monitoring those course choices. And so now we can really see the activity and do a better job of advising our students, and then again, also providing these resources. This portal also connects us to the school counselors. So for example, I got an email this morning. I have a student who wants to learn APA formatting. How do I do that? It was from a school counselor, and I emailed her back right away. We have those connections because we're using this portal together. And so I think it's something that's really connected us better to our schools because we're sharing this resource. And it also has made it easier for our schools because they only have one place to access these courses. So we're really, really excited and really proud about that. Who do we serve? So this system is giving us for the first time the ability to have shared data. So you can see this is hot off the presses from last week, our first gen. We do collect that information when students do their application in Explore EC. The percentages that you're seeing here are reporting first gen if the parent does complete an associate's degree. So it is very challenging. Mercedes instilled in me a long time ago that it's really hard to say to a student, you're first gen if your parents earned a community college degree. So we do count it that way. The numbers would be about 10% higher at both systems if we only counted bachelor's degree as first gen. And then what you can see below is enrollment by high school. So we just took a snapshot and showed the number of students being served by each county, by each high school, and by each campus. So if you see that lots of our campuses are serving each of our high schools, and we have this available for every high school in Maine. We're working on student demographic data, which we'll have for the first time as well. So a shared reporting to show student demographic data for both systems. One of the challenges with this system is that because we're providing greater access, the statute and the aspirations funding does provide a significant amount, and that amount has increased over the years. But as we're providing greater access, we continue to deplete the aspirations budget.
Now, as we talk about early college and college affordability and college completion, I think one thing I want to make sure that we realize is that credit accumulation in and of itself will not necessarily lead to a shorter time in college or greater success. That's one of the things that we've been grappling against, and really the shared data system and the shared application system has really been an effective tool for us to get a handle on that. But simply accumulating credit is not really what we want to have happening as these students are taking early college credit. Those benefits in terms of being more successful when you get to college, all of that actually appears at only 6 to 9 credits. What's happening is students are taking on a variety of credits. And what we have, when we started to see that activity, particularly because that kind of pattern can have detrimental effects actually when you actually land in college. So Amy and I realized that we needed to get out there the idea, the framework, the structure of really exploring a career pathway as you're taking these early college credits. And this was a little bit of a bold step for us because we were really aligning our classes, our offerings, our programs into these pathways together to help students see they had opportunities to explore these pathways and then pursue them not only into college, but actually into what kinds of careers are at the end of a college degree. So we did this, I want to say it was 1 or 2 years before COVID. Now I mark all my time in pre or post COVID. So we were able to get this out, but this is really how we want to talk about early college opportunities moving forward, in that it's an idea, it's an opportunity for me to explore a program, and that program is actually attached to an area of interest and a career field. So that there's real intention behind all of this. I think we also want to make sure that no one way, I showed you all those ways of taking early college credit, no one way is best. We need to have a variety of offerings because Maine is a diverse place. We're dealing with our unique geography, we're dealing with our unique schools, and as our counselors mentioned, our unique student needs. So we really need to have a lot of different options. But even within those different options, we still have barriers to access. And even with our shared platform, even with trying to get the word out about this opportunity through aspirations, we're still seeing patterns that suggest that not every student has access to these. So some of the easier ones to identify were our academic barriers that we were putting up. There were also financial barriers that we both decided to take down. You've heard about those from the counselors as well. The administration process, how do I even find a course, take a course? We've solved a lot of that with our joint portal, but more work needs to be done. And then I think these last two fall into, there is much more about culture, about how we talk about early college opportunities, about all that historical development? Is this just for high flyers, or is this for everyone who we want thinking about what their future could hold for them? So really, this is where we need help, and probably not as easy solutions. With the academics, we had easy solutions. Here, their solutions are going to get a little trickier, and they're going to involve more of the state in terms of identifying and tackling these kinds of barriers. Amy, are you going to jump into how we manage our academics?
Yes, so traditionally early college opportunities were for elite students. This was particularly true for some of the programs within the University of Maine system. And so one of the first things that we did when we were really reinvigorating and revisiting our programs was to have a shared access approach, but also removing those barriers. So all of our campuses, we had our chief academic officers agree to basically an open access policy. So we don't have standardized test scores required. We don't have minimum GPAs. What we do have is work again, as I mentioned, working closely with our school partners, the high school counselors. We rely on them to decide if a student is ready. Sometimes for our younger students, for example, freshmen and sophomores, we may ask for additional information. But for the most part, we rely on the school counselors to say, yes, the student is ready. And that is really significant statewide, but it's also significant nationally. Very few programs have removed that academic barrier. Students still have to meet course prerequisites. So we don't want to put a student in, an advanced calculus if they haven't taken pre-calc. So students still do have to meet prerequisites. But if a course doesn't have a prerequisite and the school counselor approves them and there's space in the course, generally those students will have access. When we removed our barriers, our enrollment increased by about 850 students, and we are very careful to monitor our success rate. So we don't want to just enroll students. We want to make sure that they're successful in their course. And as you can see, the success rate did not change, similar to the results that you can see for the Maine Community College system, which enacted that barrier-free academic policy before we did. We followed their lead. Again, going back to the concern that we have is that we are now providing the opportunity for more students. And now, of course, we have a shrinking pool of resources. So we'd rather see fewer credits to more students. But it's a tough call when you're kind of balancing providing that access. Now we're reaching underserved students. And that's, when we come to the point that we're running up against the allocation for this program.
About 5 years ago, we also realized that we had kind of a patchwork of, according to the aspirations statute, the aspirations comes in to get tuition, and then fees can be charged. And fees were being charged all over the state by all of our institutions. Maine's community colleges, all presidents and all colleges agreed to waive those course fees in 2018 because they were seen as a barrier. These are only charged usually for on-campus or online courses. And then the UMaine system followed closely after. Now, if you're going to take an art course or some kind of a lab course where there's an additional fee, we do still charge that fee because there's usually material attached to that. So those are still there. I think what you heard a little bit this morning is the textbooks fees, the material fees. We have various programs around the state who have tried to deal with that issue. I think it is going to be maybe not a simple solution, but something we do want to think about in terms of open access resources, really looking at OERs and making that barrier not only less for our early college students. We need to make sure OER and textless courses are available for all students, all matriculated students. And I think that really comes in here as well. In terms of our next steps, in terms of our partnership, we really are interested in seeing if we can leverage the power of micro-credentials, because we have this kind of binary separation right now between I'm not taking advantage of early college and I am taking advantage of early college. Could there be a point there where we're using micro-credentials to get more students to know about and be ready for a college course while they're still in high school? That could be intro to online learning, that could be intro to careers. We might be able to supplement some of what we heard the high schools are trying to do with a micro-credential kind of in that gray space between. We both really want to expand and promote our career pathways and make sure that our early college activity, that these students are taking credits with intention, and that we are really thinking about how this activity leads to my best next step. And then I think what we really want to do, not only with our two systems, but our DOE partners, is take a look at the aspiration statute and make sure it is doing what we think it was supposed to do. Is it funded to the level that it needs to be? Is the language written in such a way that these credits are maximizing a student's potential to do well in college and complete their high school requirements? This is the kind of thing we want to do. Just last summer, because of the demand, there was not aspirations funding for the summer. Luckily, the UMaine system and the Maine Community College system both pledged together to cover that activity, but we couldn't cover everything that the students wanted to do. We had to limit that. So it is starting to have an effect on what students can do. And I think when we're starting to think about this particular statute and all of its tendrils, the wonderful thing is we were able to start something yesterday that is the first step in that. And I'll let Amy close us out.
Great, thank you. So we were recognized for the work that we've been doing by some national organizations. Mercedes and I had decided in terms of next steps, we really wanted to focus on equity and reaching those underserved populations. And so these national organizations had a grant opportunity to conduct a research study. And so the research study involves having a focus group. So we've pulled together school counselors, principals, CTE leaders, some private organizations that work in this space. And we've going to have 2 series of focus groups and then a final meeting to discuss. And the outcome of this will be a report that will make recommendations to the state for ways that we may redesign our policy with equity in mind. The guideline for this work is through the Unlocking Potential. It's a state policy roadmap that was put out by the College and High School Alliance. So this is a really exciting next step for us. If we have limited resources, we really want to make sure that we're going to serve the students that need these programs the most. So it's an opportunity to really look at the work that we're doing and making sure that the policies that we have in place, we've done all these great things, but are we really still reaching the populations that we need to? So I will stop there and so that we have time for some questions.
I would like to ask one as we start. I certainly support the programs for early college access, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the privates are also providing early college access at no support from the state. And I would like to see the programs, and I think all of us would like to see the programs expanded, supported by the state, if you will. I think here at Hudson, we have almost 200 students a semester that are on 0 tuition. So I would be less than remiss if I didn't say we weren't the only private institution that was also providing early college access. And I think you should get stronger funding so that you could support both public and private in these endeavors. That's how important they are. So.
Yeah, thank you, President Clark, for those comments. We do have a few folks with questions. I am going to suggest if you want to go and raise the old hand down on the lower part of your screen. Otherwise, I will totally lose control of whose turn it is. So right now we got 3 people in the queue: Senator Whitsom, Robert, and Hillary.
Thank you very much. And I wish to congratulate, I think it was Amy and Mercedes. I mean, studying and refining the barriers is so important. And I am so proud that you folks have done this. And so congratulations. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator Whitsom. Robert. Oh, you pulled back your hand?
Yeah, well, I was trying to remember to take it down. Thank you so much for just a second. I wanted to echo the senator's comments. This has been the most successful education initiative that I have monitored perhaps in my career, and just a congratulations to Mercedes and Amy for achieving this. I mean, think about what they've just told you. This is, in every bit of evidence we have found, a successful program. The students who participate in it go on to college, and when they do, they graduate at higher rates. That's the big message. So we have found something that works, and coordinators and directors that can make it work. The other thing that they've done a marvelous job about is managing the pool of resources effectively. And I wanted to be clear that all of this, we want greater reach. And so we're having to sort of manage the funds. That's a net effect of there aren't enough funds to go around. So I wanted to be clear that if we could ask anything of you, more money in this program will create more success. I mean, we couldn't have found anything that has more direct impact on our high school student success. So anyways, congratulations to you both, and just wanted to offer those comments. Thank you, sir.
This would probably be a good chance for us to share in terms of the portal. Now that we are sharing that resource, we do have the credit limit. And before, there was no way for the two systems to know how many credits the students were taking until the bills went to the DOE. And so sometimes students would exceed because they would take some with us and some with the community college system. So now all of our teams are tracking those credits so that there won't be that overbilling situation, which is also important, so that we're using those funds very judiciously.
No, thank you, Amy. Hillary.
I just want to echo the piece of thank you for making a system much simpler. If I think back to when all of this started, trying to keep track of all of it was huge. So it is simpler. However, on the student end, I do see them struggling when I send them here's the login information, here's how you navigate between the two systems. And then little things now that are like SOC 100 and SOC 101. Are those the same? Yes, you're probably looking at two different campuses, so I'm finding that now there's another level where they'll try to do it on their own, and maybe they have someone at home who can help them, but maybe not. So it's they'll quickly make an appointment to come see me on that. The other piece I'm noticing, I don't know if you guys can reflect on this, but they're getting kicked out of class too. They're getting kicked out of their registrations a lot in the last 2 years. I'm going to assume it's because the classes need to be filled by your paying customers. But it is happening. I've had like 3 or 4 this week. So now I've got to help them navigate to find the same class, but at another campus. So that's been more recent, is that in the past 2 years.
So our portal is an application system. So when a student applies, they're not necessarily in the class. So we wouldn't necessarily unenroll a student to make room for another student, but it might be that when we went to enroll that student, and this may not be the day that they applied, that the class was full. Yeah, so that's how it works.
The terminology pieces. When you're talking about micro-credentialing, I'm going to suggest micro-credential all the school counselors and really make sure we know this stuff first. Because there's again, it's a lot coming at us. And then if we have a kid max out their 12 and we want to pick up Husson, because we could do that one and get more classes, it's a lot coming at us to keep track of. And it's still a little bit different campus by campus. And I think what the kids get offered via email on supports is a little different campus to campus. I feel like Fort Kent will send a bunch of videos. And so trying to keep track of that and help support the students. So if you guys can do, in your spare time, more outreach, because I get a lot of emails from both of you, more to help counselors figure that out, that would be really appreciated.
Thank you, Hillary. I have a question, but before I do that, I just want to check with President Dagler. He had his hand up and then it looks like it went down, so I just want to make sure.
So I thank you, Representative Crockett. I actually just didn't want to take the committee's time to repeat things that have been said, but I do want to really thank Amy and Mercedes and compliment them on the presentation. And most importantly, emphasize the cooperation and the working together that helps make the total program so much better, and just the way that the two systems are working together in this environment. And it's represented in a lot of environments, but it helps make us all better. So thank you both.
Thank you, President Dagler, and that cannot be said enough. So thank you for adding that. I got more. It's a question. It's more of a clarification question that hopefully either Amy or Mercedes can answer. With the aspirations funding that obviously comes from the legislature, is it a set percentage, or does all of it go to early college? How is the funding? Because obviously we've got some shortfalls, and I'm just curious if there's ways to address that.
I might defer to Becky and Samantha on this one because they might know. I believe it's a line in the DOE. Is that right, Becky and Samantha?
Is that right?
In the DOE's budget. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I can dig a little deeper into that and see if there's, more efficient ways to direct it, I guess, towards maybe early college.
The set amount has been increasing, but the concern is that it has increased, but only to meet the spending. We've been overspending in the program historically. So the state has generously added more funds, except that it basically equals what we've been spending anyway. So it's like making up for shortfalls. The DOE has generously provided for those shortfalls in the past. But COVID, for example, was a record year for us because everybody was taking our classes online. And so we overspent significantly, for example.
Okay. It doesn't appear that we have any more questions for Amy or Mercedes. So one, I want to thank you both again for the presentation and enlightening us on the opportunities that we have in front of us as far as making college more affordable. This is a great way to get there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is just more of an informal discussion among the members. And I'm not sure if Senator Daughtry is back. She's not saying anything, so I'm going to say no. She's got some furnace issues going on at the house, and so she's been pulled away off and on. I'll only speak for myself. This meeting today, we had a separate meeting with Hillary, Maddie and I, with respect to what I think is the critical link in getting to students and their families understanding exactly what they're going to be confronted with on a financial basis when they're going to higher ed. And it's an opportunity, I think, that will go a long way towards decreasing those fears that are out there among families, especially first timers that don't really understand the process and where to go, what to do. So the earlier we can obviously get to them and get higher ed on their radar, I think all the numbers will just take care of themselves, and then they will improve. And what we're getting from the K through 12 group is just, I think, the roadmap to how we can get there. So if we can, address these issues, turning them into opportunities as early as possible, I think it's going to go a long way. And want to thank the counselors. I know they're not here anymore, but for putting themselves out there and being candid and direct with what the needs are. And I'm looking forward to hopefully finding ways to exploit those opportunities. And Maddie is back.
Thank you very much for covering Representative Crockett. I've been listening on my phone while running back and forth, and I apologize. We had our boiler being cleaned as well as some home improvement projects that all showed up at exactly the wrong time, but was able to listen into most of it and would echo exactly what Representative Crockett said about all the various different conversations, and gratitude for everyone being here today. We're right at 1 o'clock, so we did want to check in a little bit on discussion for the next meeting. I don't know if Sam or Becky, if you had anything you want to add before we just talk about general timing and sort of next steps. Everyone's starting to get the Zoom face, which I know very well. So one of the nice things, one of the blessings of the way that the commission is set up is that we are not hamstrung by when the legislature starts. Commissions that are staffed by OPLA have very, tricky ways that they can operate, and keeping in mind that we're coming right up on the holidays and we do still have 2 more meetings that we're charged with. We're probably going to be looking at January and February for our next meeting. So for legislators, it'll be concurrent while we're in session. Just wanted to ask if there are any concerns for our non-legislative members, sort of with that sort of longer timeline, because if anyone's tried to schedule anything with anyone for the last 2 weeks of December, I'm sure you all can agree with me that it's pretty much near impossible. And not seeing any concerns with that. I think my next question is, we have our duties that are in the statute to go through, and based off of the questions that were coming from the different conversations today, I'm wondering if any of the commission members, we're hearing really good recommendations, which interestingly enough seem to ring pretty true to what we discussed in 2014 as well, of increasing funding as a whole as a way to for state allocations for our public systems, as well as the really great equity and equalizer of funding early college on different wholes, as well as funding our Maine State Grant Program, which benefits both our public and our private institutions in our system. I'm wondering if anyone else has any requests. It was great to hear from Nebby. It was great to hear from the early college program. It was also great to hear from the guidance counselors. Just wondering if anyone has any suggestions or any requests. I don't know if it makes sense to not put Jason on the spot since he's not here, to hear from Educate Maine as well about some of their efforts that sort of tie into this. Yeah, I think I would just open the floor to see if anyone has any requests or any suggestions as well. Not seeing, I'm trying to click through the little screen to see if anyone's. Ron, did you just raise your hand?
Sure, just a comment or two that I do think what you've just said, Senator, regarding Jason Judd, Educate Maine. I mean, I'm very well aware as a member of the MELMAC board also that there are a number of organizations which are working toward similar goals here across the state. And that at some point it might be wise for the commission to study how those efforts could be unified in the most effective way. And I'm not sure if that's going to fall within the scope of what we're doing or not, but it seems like maybe for me, I don't have any immediate recommendations, but I think it's certainly worth pause to figure out how those broader alliances can help. Because I think that we've seen with Educate Maine and other groups, we've seen advances made to try to unify some of the efforts to refortify the workforce to get to where we want to be, but also, of course, to look at degree completion and affordability. The other thing that I would have to say is that I think the counselors gave us so much pause to think about the state of students. And it makes me think about, developmentally, are we doing what needs to be done in the midst of what was described as the worst mental health crisis that students have undergone? And also realizing that we are still somewhat in the fog of finding our way forward when there are wholesale changes happening in credentialing and in post-secondary education. So this is perhaps a moment where we do indeed need to think about paying attention to those programs that are in place, like the Maine State Grant as an example. But we also may need to look at things in a different light. And I'm not sure that we've really been able to do that other than to get a report as to how things are looking. But finding our way forward is really difficult work right now. But I think it's really going to be crucial if we're going to find a strategy that's going to be successful. So those are my comments. I think I just need more time to think about what I would recommend next, Senator. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I would completely agree with that. The social emotional impact of what we're going through right now, already coming on the heels of sort of a changing attitude towards post-secondary education, really, you know, as we heard over and over again, have created a perfect storm, and what really are the best ways to really help students be able to navigate this and what those next steps are even going to look like. You know, unfortunately, despite all of our best planning and attempts to have a crystal ball, I think no one really thought we'd be at the point we are now. And I think breaking down those silos really has been an issue for a lot of folks. But I will say I've been really sort of buoyed and excited by the work that's being done over the last decade between the different systems and a lot of the different actors like Educate Maine to really bring a lot of those people together are helping. But like you said, it still sort of feels like we're flying blind, not knowing what the ramifications of this are going to be. I mean, you know, it's going to be interesting. And one of the things I sort of was thinking about, I think we're hearing about this maybe from the community college system, or just I can't remember who on this commission said it, just the general attitude towards, you know, wanting to look at college when you're going to be potentially remote and what it's going to look like. And one of the things we did do in the 2014 commission was put out a survey sort of to the general population to let people feel, you know, be able to contribute their opinion of like, how do you feel about attending a post-secondary program, et cetera, et cetera. And I can send that out. It might be something for us to consider. I mean, obviously it's not going to be a scientific data set, but it's another way to sort of hear more sort of personal accounts or anecdotes and sort of gauge the temperature of what people are thinking. So just to sort of put that out there. Any other thoughts or comments? I could definitely keep monologuing on a lot of this, probably a little bit too longer. So what I'd say is please think on this, mull on this. If you come up with any ideas or, you know, like you're seeing firsthand, you know, like the guidance counselors were able to share with us. And thank you so much, Hillary, for organizing that. You know, if anything comes up, please email us so that we can try to put it on for the next meeting. And my co-chair and I and Sam and Becky will definitely check in to be able to sort of come up with the next meeting, and definitely check your emails for when that'll come up. Representative Crockett and then Senator Woodson.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Doctrine. Just a question. I know we've had some discussions about moving our timeline around. Are we close to a resolution on that, or are we locked in still to?
I think the realities are that we'd have to ask just for where we are. So we did get information. I think Sam and I and Becky got the email on what we have to ask the Ledge Council for moving the report back deadline. Yeah, so we can go ahead and put through that memo. So, okay. Senator Woodson?
Yes, thank you. I guess my question, we're going back in January, we're going to be doing Zoom committee meetings, right? Now, yeah, will we be like 3 days a week in the beginning? I'm just looking at a time frame for the next meeting.
So I don't think for all of us on education, this is a question that I asked to Senator Rafferty and Representative Brennan, and I need to follow up about what our schedule is. But the last conversation that Senator Rafferty and I had is that they would make allowances, knowing, because it's just education committee members on here, that they could build up to the schedule to make sure that it fits with our education schedule. So they were pretty amenable to that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Other than that, any other questions? Not seeing any. I hope you all have an incredible holiday break. I hope you actually get some time to rest and be with your loved ones and breathe. And I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes during those moments when I'm cooking or doing baking is when I get these ideas for a lot of my other work. So if you have any of those light bulb moments, you know, take a quick moment to let us know. But otherwise, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you to my esteemed co-chair for holding down the fort. I was running back and forth. I guess one good thing about Zoom meetings is I could listen on my phone. And with that,